Hey friends, so we are back with a brand new movie on What If Deidara and Kurotsuchi Tells to Naruto Die movie, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. Minato Namikaze was hated by all of Iwa for slaughtering their forces during the Third Great Shinobi War. The Tsuchikage, Onoki of both scales, didn't bear these feelings. He would have done the same for his village and family, so he couldn't blame the man. He was quite surprised whenever he heard of the man's death. What will he do when this man's son shows up at his village half beaten and near death? He will take the boy in and raise him like he knew the boy's father would have wanted. As far as I've seen, this story will be the first Naruto X Fem, Deidara on here. If I am wrong, then please tell me in the comments. In this story, Deidara and Kurotsuchi will both be Jinchuriki. I will specify which later on, but you could probably already tell by looking at Kekkei Genkei. Anyways, I'm not gonna play this off like you don't know who this little blonde child is, because if you didn't then you wouldn't be here. On to the story. Naruto walked through the rocky land and mountains, his clothes in rags and his blood dried on his body. His hair was black with soot and dirt. His bright blue eyes were dull and lacked hope. His malnourished body had a hole in its chest that hadn't closed up. There were lightning strike-like marks surrounding the hole which he received from the Anbu that was supposed to protect him. He still remembered the man's face that was half covered in another mask. He pondered on the man's words, "This is for my sensei. You aren't his son, you demon." The blonde shivered, remembering the venom that the man spoke with. His 5-year-old mind was matured from the long and bloody torture sessions the villagers gave him. The boy had stolen a few school books from the village library along with what he could find of shinobi techniques. He had grown his mental knowledge and wits. He shook the thoughts out of his head as he saw a squad of Iwa shinobi run up to him. They all had concerned looks at the beaten child. A smile graced his face as he fell forward, succumbing to the bliss of unconsciousness. The biggest man in the group caught him and looked him over. He gasped at the now finger-sized hole in his chest. "We need to get him to the village now," he commanded, running back at his full speed with his squad behind him. It took them about 10 minutes to reach the gates of Iwagakure. They rushed through and straight to the hospital. The man holding Naruto gave him to the nurses and followed them, knowing the boy was no older than his daughter. An hour later, they had Naruto laying in a bed and they were getting the soot out of his hair. "So how is he?" the man, Kitsuchi, asked. "He seems to have healing that is comparable to a Jinchuriki. Other than that, he is severely malnourished and it would be safe to say he hasn't eaten in a few weeks," the nurse said in a sad tone. "Could you pull up his shirt real quick?" Kitsuchi asked, and the nurse nodded, pulling up the gown to show his abdomen. Once Kitsuchi saw the seal, he knew. This boy is a Jinchuriki. "Stay here and do not let anyone in," he commanded, getting a nod. He quickly went to get his father, the Tsuchikage. They arrived a few minutes later, seeing the nurse feeding him some rice, and he was sucking the stuff down. Onoki gasped slightly at the sight of the boy. His blonde hair and bright blue eyes reminded him of Konoha's yellow flash. He floated up to Naruto and looked at him. "What is your name, boy, and where do you come from?" Onoki questioned. Naruto sank back a little before he spoke up. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki from Konoha." Naruto spat the name of the village with such venom it surprised the 3 Iwa shinobi. It was now confirmed to Onoki who this boy was. "What happened to you?" Onoki asked, letting his voice get softer. "They hunted me down like they do every night. I left because no one loves me there," Naruto said, looking down. The heart of the nurse beside him melted just from the sad look in his eyes. "Very well. After you get fed and cleaned up, I am going to allow you to stay here in Iwa," Onoki said, seeing a spark of hope in the boy's eyes. Onoki smiled warmly before floating out with Kitsuchi. Once outside the room, Onoki looked at his son. "We will be taking him into the family. There is no question that he is Minato's son. If he even has a bit of parent's intellect, then he will be a great shinobi," Onoki spoke, getting a nod. "It will also give Kurotsuchi a friend who is like her other than Deidara," Kitsuchi said, getting a nod from his father. "I would like you to go grab him some new clothes. Once he gets dressed we will settle him in," Onoki said. Kitsuchi agreed with his father before leaving to grab the clothes. Onoki peeked at the now happy blonde through the door window and smiled himself. "I will take care of your son, Minato-san," Onoki thought, looking up before floating away. Asterisk in Konoha, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage, was sitting at his desk finishing the final piece of paperwork there. He had spent the entire previous night doing all the damned work. "I wonder how Naruto-kun is doing," Hiruzen wondered. The old Kage smiled at the thought of the happy blonde. He nodded at his plan and stood up out of his chair. Hiruzen grabbed his pipe before shining to the boy's apartment. He knocked for a few minutes before growing slightly worried. The cage tried to see if the door was locked and tried to open it when an Anbu operative dropped beside him. "Sir, we just found Naruto's Anbu team dead in an alleyway." Despite the training the man had, his voice was still full of worry. Without warning, Hiruzen flared his chakra to massive proportions. This sent the Anbu around the village scrambling. "Let's hope Naruto-kun is still in the land of fire," the old man said in a sickly sweet tone. The Anbu beside him, Inu, gulped at the sign that the god of shinobi was still very much alive. Back in Iwa, Naruto's hospital room, Naruto smiled at his new clothes. They were beige pants with some black sandals. Covering his torso was a red long-sleeve hoodie. It was quite cold that time of the year, so he had to stay nice and warm. "Tell me, Naruto, what do you know of Iwa's history with Konoha?" Onoki asked, hoping to be able to ease the boy's heritage to him. Well, they were in a temporary truce during the First Shinobi War, but afterwards nothing but enemies. Most of Iwa grew a hatred towards Konoha during the Third Shinobi War because of Minato Namikaze killing a bunch of their troops. Onoki was pleasantly surprised by the knowledge the boy shared. "It seems you are quite smart for a boy your age," he complimented before getting to the point. "If you had to guess about how much of Iwa still holds hatred for the man?" Naruto shrugged and spoke. "Maybe 95%. Onoki nodded. "Yes, most of Iwa despises the man, so what do you think they'd do if they saw a child with the same looks as him?" Naruto shivered in his new sandals. "They'd probably kill him," Naruto stated. Onoki closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Now, what do you think they'd do to his only son?" Naruto's eyes flew open as his gaze set on the old man. "They'd kill me or probably torture me," Naruto whispered in a small tone. Onoki was taken back at the words. "So you already know of your heritage?" Naruto nodded. "Then you know what we must do to keep you alive." Naruto nodded as he stared at the box of hair dye sitting on the table. "Before we do that, we must change your name. I know Konoha will be looking out for your name, so we have to come up with one." Naruto nodded as he began to think. "Izan will help you with the dye while you think of your name," Onoki said, opening the door to the nurse from earlier. "Come on, Naruto, let's get you looking like a US citizen," she said cheerfully, dragging the boy to the washroom. About 30 minutes later, they reappeared with Naruto now having brown hair. "Naruto, follow me. I will lead you to my home, or shall I say our home." A warmth filled Onoki's heart at the smile he caused. "Izan, could you sense if Kurotsuchi and Deidara are at my house?" The nurse nodded and closed her eyes for a few seconds. "They're there, Tsuchikage-sama." Onoki nodded his thanks and left the room with Naruto following. "Bye, Izan-chan," he shouted as he walked through the door frame. Onoki began a small conversation with the boy as they walked through the village. Many whispers were going through the populace that Onoki had chosen another apprentice, but the two didn't hear them. Onoki was in his old man storytelling mode about the village while Naruto was stuck listening. It only took them a couple minutes to reach the medium-sized multi-story home that housed the Tsuchikage and his family. The Tsuchikage turned to Naruto with a questioning glance. "I think I'll go by Koku Muranami," the young brunette stated. The Tsuchikage nodded and turned to the home. He could hear children playing in the backyard and guided Naruto through the gate to the back garden. The two girls playing stopped and looked at the boy walking in. "Good morning, girls." Onoki greeted them. Their attention was on Naruto. While they studied Naruto, he studied them. The one to the left had long blonde hair tied up in a ponytail and bright orange eyes. Her face was slightly round but pointy at the same time. He then took notice of her clothes. She had a puffy orange sweater and black pants. She didn't have any shoes on. Naruto moved his eyes to the girl on the right. She had short black hair with bright pink eyes. Her face was very similar to the girl beside her that Naruto assumed they were sisters. Her clothing choice was different from both of the other children. She had a black skirt on with a blue t-shirt. Naruto was about to introduce himself whenever he saw a certain gleam in their eyes. He knew that gleam. They almost squealed whenever they saw his whiskers and ran over to touch them. Naruto sighed heavily before the girls reached him but noticed that they stopped a few feet away from him. He also noticed the small rock wall that formed just to their waists. A blonde woman appeared behind the girls with a motherly fury. "Now girls, what did I teach you about manners?" Even Naruto shivered at the tone. "Gomen ka-san," they said at the same time, confirming Naruto's earlier suspicions. The blonde was the first to introduce herself. "Hello, I'm Deidara Gushiken." She bowed much to Naruto's demise. Both children had a smile on their faces, making all adults nearby smile too. Naruto turned towards the ravenette. "Kurotsuchi Chisaka," she said in a short tone. Obviously she was more interested in him than her introduction. "Nice to meet you both, I'm Koku Muranami." He bowed but really didn't like doing it. He hated formalities. "You see, this boy has manners." The blonde woman said in a scolding tone. All right, that's enough for greetings. Why don't you three go run around while I speak with Hatsume-chan? Onoki shooed the kids off. The blonde woman watched the kids run off before turning to the floating elder. So who is that boy? She asked, slightly suspicious. He is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He ran away from Konoha after they almost killed him. Whenever Kitsuchi found him, there was a hole in his chest. Hatsume gasped and her maternal instincts made her go murderous. I had to change his name so Konoha wouldn't be able to find him easily. Before I go, I must tell you that young Naruto has never felt any family bonds from what I've learned. You might have to teach him things that children learn like how to cook and such. Hatsume nodded before her elder floated away. The retired Iwa Anbu looked at the boy playing with her two children and smiled. I'll make sure you get a nice childhood. Iwa council room. Onoki sat down in his chair at the end of the table, raising his hand to silence the mumbling council people. A few hours ago my son, Kitsuchi, came across an injured boy no older than my granddaughters at the southeast border. He immediately brought the boy to the hospital and got him treated. Even the most aged of the councilmen had disgusted looks on their faces. Who would do such a thing to a boy? One of the female jonin asked. When the boy awoke we asked him what happened to him and where he came from. Apparently the boy is from Konoha and was beaten severely causing him to leave. Those damned tree huggers. They've gone too far to beat a child. The head medic seethed in anger. Calm yourself, we have found the reason for the boy's treatment. He is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Onoki already knew what was about to happen. If he is properly trained then he could become even stronger than anyone here. A councilwoman mumbled. I have a suggestion Tsuchikage-sama, the Anbu commander said. Please go ahead. Onoki waved his hand in the air. I suggest that we give the boy as normal a childhood as possible and whenever he graduates, make his squad with Deidara and Kurotsuchi. Having a fully trained squad of Jinchuriki would be dangerous to even the most experienced shinobi. I also suggest that you personally see to their training as you did with your sons. Maybe even one can become our next Tsuchikage. Onoki smiled at the suggestion. I have already started building a relationship between young Koku and my granddaughters. They're all currently playing in my backyard. Very wise Tsuchikage-sama, that way they have friends who also share their burden. My only concern is the Biju within them communicating. A councilman stated. From the information I gathered from Han and Roshi, their Biju do not like communicating with anyone other than each other. However they might want to communicate with Kyuubi so I will keep an eye on them. It was about 3 in the afternoon whenever Onoki left his office. He was about to shunshin down to his home whenever a summoned bird flew to him. It landed on his outstretched hand before he pulled the scroll tied to its leg. He opened the scroll and widened his eyes as he read. I should have known that old monkey would do something drastic like this. His spy within Konoha had just informed him that every Anbu from Konoha was scouting their borders and they were ordered to find the boy even if it meant crossing the borders. The old man sighed as he turned back to his office. It seemed he wasn't able to go home just yet. Unknown location. It has been a while. Kurama. A deep voice bellowed through the empty cave-like space. It certainly has Son Goku. A slightly deeper one answered back. Man, it's dark in here. A childish-like tone said before the room was lit up showing Kyuubi, Gobi, and Yanbi in all their glory. Our Jinchurikis are growing to be friends already, the Gobi said. It is my container Kukua, he has a way to get people to like him. I think it might be his Uzumaki blood. Kurama said in a slightly annoyed tone. You led him to us, didn't you? Son Goku, the Yanbi, asked. His answer was a grunt from Kyuubi. Yeah, I figured the kid would find a better time living in Iwa where they actually respect Jinchurikis. A grin grew on Goku's face. Are you growing soft, Kurama? Do you care for that boy? The giant monkey had to dodge a small Bijudama for that comment. It is obvious that we all care for our containers. Kukua said in a tired tone. This is the most I've ever heard you speak, Kukua. Kyuubi chuckled. Yes, well I have to talk now thanks to that one. He pointed one of his tails at Yanbi. Kurama raised a non-existent eyebrow in curiosity. Our previous Jinchuriki were brothers and I always dragged him into these little meetings to bother him in the middle of the night. Yanbi said, not a sliver of remorse there. Kurama laughed, I thought I was the kitsune here. Suddenly his brothers zoned out. An irk mark grew on his forehead. Oi, what's going on? Kurama yelled. Our Jinchuriki are introducing themselves in more detail. Do you not have a connection to yours? Yanbi laughed. No, I was sealed up by the Shinigami. I cannot see, hear, or feel anything my Jinchuriki does. Yanbi sighed. Tonight try to contact him and gain your senses, but for now we'll just tell you what happens. Asterisk in the kitchen of Onoki's house, around 7 p.m. Asterisk since Koku isn't familiar with either of you. How about you two introduce yourselves again with information about yourself like favorite food, least favorite food, your favorite thing to do, and what you want to do when you grow up? Hatsume asked, earning a nod from the two girls. So who wants to go first? Hatsume asked, looking at the children sitting at the bar while she cooked. I'll go since I was so rude earlier. Kurotsuchi said, a little down. Naruto shrugged it off but she couldn't let it go. My name is Kurotsuchi Chisaka, my favorite food is yakitori, I hate caviar, I like to play house, and I want to be a shinobi when I grow up, just like Ka-san. Hatsume smiled at the ending and pointed her wooden spoon to Deidara to start next. My name is Deidara Gushiken, my favorite food is bakuden, I hate mixed rice, I like to play ninja, and I want to be a better shinobi than Kurotsuchi. She shouted the last part which made Naruto laugh. I guess I can give it a shot too since I'm new and all, Naruto said. The two girls twisted in their seats to look at him. I'm Koku Muranami, my favorite food is ramen, I don't like raw vegetables, I like to read about history, and I also want to be a shinobi but I'm gonna be better than both of you. A smirk formed on his face at the end. Oh yeah, you wanna bet? Once we start the academy we'll see who is the better shinobi. Kurotsuchi shouted. Onoki flouted into the room and smiled. A rivalry amongst you three might end up making you the most powerful shinobi ever, Onoki said to himself. I'm gonna be the best shinobi, Deidara shouted. No, I am, Kurotsuchi shouted back. Naruto decided to join in and soon they were all arguing about it until food was set in front of them. Asterisk a little later that night Naruto was settled down in one of the guest bedrooms just down the hall from the girls. He was in a nice bed and soon drifted off to sleep without a peep. Hatsume looked through the cracked door at the young boy sleeping and sighed. To think it's only been a day and I already feel like he's my own. She mumbled, walked down the hall to check on the other children. Kitsuchi walked out of the girls' room just before she got there. They were really excited about Koku being here, he said. Well, I'm glad he can finally make some friends. Kitsuchi nodded at her before walking past her to go to his room. Good night, Hatsume. The woman returned to pleasantry before turning in for the night. Naruto's mind, the young boy woke up in what seemed to be a small forest. His heart sank at the sight of the grass and trees. They threw me back to Konoha. He cried. No, this is your mindscape, child. It is simply a creation of your mind, a fox said, laying in the grass beside him. The fox was the size of a large dog and had 9 tails swaying behind it. Naruto screamed and hopped away from the creature. The fox had a bored look as it turned to him. I'm not going to eat you, it said in an annoyed tone. You're the Kyuubi though. The fox sighed, turning towards the boy and stretching. Listen kid, I only attacked Konoha because I was being controlled and when I came to people were attacking me so I defended myself. Now back to business. The fox leapt at Naruto, frightening him. The fox stopped a few feet in front of him, however. The seal that holds me in you also protects you against me here. I've summoned you here because I want access to your senses. It gets really boring in here all alone. Naruto took a deep breath and stared at the fox. What do I get in return? What are the consequences? Kurama smiled. This kid was certainly smart to ask those questions. You get heightened senses. The consequence is that your eyes and mine will meld together, forming what I can only guess would be purple eyes in your sockets. Naruto stared hard at the fox before nodding. How would I open my senses to you? The fox grinned. You must allow me to touch your forehead with my paw. The barrier won't activate if you allow me. Naruto nodded and watched as the paw made contact with his forehead. You'll get used to the heightened hearing and scent soon, but it will overwhelm you at first. Naruto shrugged before his eyes warped to a red before settling at an electric purple. The kitsune smiled before he pushed Naruto back into a dream about ramen. Naruto hoped down the stairs in the home, trying to beat the two girls down. His plan was almost foolproof except for the fact he always woke up late. The moment he got to the kitchen, the two girls turned in their seats and stared at him, each having a piece of toast in their mouth. Their styles had completely changed now that they were academy students. Deidara had a fishnet shirt covered by a blue haori. Her pants were gray and stopped just above her ankles. She had a pair of sandals covering her feet and her hair was in its usual ponytail. Kurotsuchi on the other hand had a simple red and blue battle kimono that stopped above her knees. She had high socks on that ran down into black sandals. Her normal short hair was grown out shortly, sitting in a bun above her head. Naruto himself had his old clothes with a color change. His hoodie was now a light gray and his pants a black. His feet were still covered in a pair of sandals. His brown hair had grown slightly and caused a single strand of hair to go onto his forehead. His purple eyes still looked electric and his whiskers were more defined. Koku-kun, come get some toast. The academy starts in a few minutes. Naruto groaned but accepted the toast before being pushed out the door. You three have a good day, I'll pick you up this afternoon. The moment the door closed, the three started their journey to the academy, which was a quick fast walk away. They arrived a few minutes later and walked into their class. It seemed that they were not the only ones running a little late as a line was forming outside, walking in. A few seconds later, they were in the box-like room and all three sat by each other at the back beside the window. A few minutes passed and the Chunin instructor was yet to arrive, so the students started talking. A group of girls in the front were looking at Naruto, blushing, and looking away. This caused both Deidara and Kurotsuchi to narrow their eyes. They had already laid claim to the brunette, in their minds at least. A few more minutes passed as the girls stared at Naruto. One decided to get up and approach the former blonde. Naruto saw the same gleam in her eyes that he'd seen before. Before she could even talk, he did. No, you may not touch my whiskers, and yes, they're birthmarks. Finally, the Chunin instructor walked in. Much to Naruto's surprise, it was the nurse who helped him when he got ill. Good morning class, I'm your instructor Izan. Please refer to me as Izan-sensei from now on. Today we will be speaking about the history of Iwagakure. All children groaned as the boring history lesson began. That afternoon, during dinner, so kids, how was your first day at the academy? Kitsuchi asked. Boring was the consensus among the children. Okay, well, did you make any friends? Hatsume asked. No, all the girls kept asking to touch Koku-kun's whiskers. At one point me and Deidara-chan had to act like bodyguards for him. Kitsuchi burst out into full laughter. So I see you are already popular amongst the girls. He observed, embarrassing the boy. It's more like being annoyed by them. Naruto grumbled, eating some food. Would you like to wear a half mask to cover your whiskers? Naruto's body froze at the mention of a half mask. Suddenly a pain was in his chest and he could see a single blood-red eye along with a normal coal-black one. This concerned everyone there greatly. For Kitsuchi, it only confirmed his suspicions of who put the hole in Naruto's chest. There was only one man who wore a half mask and had a Raiden technique like that. How about a bandana? You could slip it on and off with ease and it could even hide your identity during missions. Kitsuchi suggested. Naruto broke out his little funk and nodded at the man. Yeah, a solid black bandana would work. After dinner was over, Kitsuchi walked towards the home's armory. He returned a few minutes later with a black bandana in his hand. The Jonin handed it to Naruto. This should work, don't tear it up now. I doubt we have any more. Naruto thanked him and began to put it on. You can do that in the morning. Right now, you need to go to bed. The older male pushed him off to bed. Another time skip, 2 years Onoki was having a great afternoon. There wasn't that much paperwork and it was almost the end of the school year, meaning he could spend some time with his grandchildren. The old Cage was about to finish a Sudoku game whenever his door burst open. Much to his surprise, the Anbu in the room didn't drop down and attack. He knew there was only one person who could do that without alerting the Anbu. What do you want, Koku-kun? He asked, looking up. I need you to give me the genin exam, old man. Naruto shouted. His hair was out of place and he was obviously shaken. And why do you want to graduate early? You'll leave Kurotsuchi and Deidara behind. The Tsuchikage commented, returning to his little game. The fangirls are starting to get to me. I've tried everything from getting the girls to guard me to refusing them. They won't leave me alone. Naruto looked like he was going to break down into tears. Onoki floated out of his seat and went to embrace the boy in a hug. Fine, I'll give you the exam on one condition. Naruto's sparkling eyes looked up. You make sure that Deidara and Kurotsuchi pass with you. Done. Naruto shouted. What do they need to know? Naruto asked after a short pause. I have faith in their academics, so you just need to work on their academy jutsu and have them learn 1C rank ninjutsu. Naruto looked ready to bolt out of the office to grab the girls when Onoki spoke again. If you do this by the end of the week, then I'll give you the test. The moment those words left his mouth, Naruto was gone. Onoki floated up into the air and sighed heavily. At least he got a few years of a normal childhood. Few days later, Naruto, Kurotsuchi, and Deidara walked into the academy. It was a Friday, but not just any Friday. This was the one reserved for the graduating class to take their exams. Many of the other grades would actually go there and watch the graduating class do their jutsu, but only if the student wanted them to. Naruto took a deep breath before stepping into the exam room. It was about double the size as a normal classroom and filled with desks that were far apart. Filling the room was the graduating class, each one staring at the 3 children. Come on and sit down. The Chunin instructor said, motioning them to the open seats. The 3 children ignored the glares and sat down. This test has 25 questions and you all will have 40 minutes to complete it. Good luck. With that the students flipped their papers and started. Naruto stared at the first question and sighed quietly. If an Iwa shinobi doesn't know this, then they're as good as dead. The question was, what clan uses insects to absorb chakra? This test didn't have multiple choices and people had to put their answers. Naruto wrote down Aburame and moved on. When should one perform the kawarini in battle? He wrote down his answer and moved on. About 10 minutes later, he finished the small packet and looked around. It seemed 4 others had also finished, a blonde guy, a brunette chick, Kurotsuchi, and Deidara. A smirk played on his lips. He placed his head down on the table and started quietly fake snoring. He knew it would irritate those in the room trying to focus on the test, and it was funny. The ones who already finished the test looked at him and laughed a little. Outside, in the academy courtyard in the stands created by one of the chunins sat the lower grades. The second years were sitting on the second level and were talking amongst themselves. One of the girls had dark green hair and pupil-less green eyes. I wonder where Koku-kun is. I thought he liked to watch these exams. This girl was Naruto's lead fangirl and was the main reason Naruto asked for the early graduation. I bet he's with Kurotsuchi and Deidara. They're gone too if you haven't noticed, spoke a guy beside her. The male smirked as she attempted to hit him. Now is that any way to treat your only brother? He pouted, avoiding another punch. Maybe they're all going on a date right now. The male now had to jump to avoid the angry sister. Back in the classroom, the time passed quickly in the room and soon the chunin instructor told them they had no more time. He moved them all outside into the hall. Now if you'd like to complete the rest of the test with an audience, raise your hand. The chunin looked at the crowd and smiled at how the whole group raised their hands. Very well, follow me. The 3 young ones stood in the back of the line speaking to each other. I want you two to speed through the jutsu as fast as possible. Whenever it comes to the taijutsu, please don't try anything risky. Both girls clicked their tongues at the last comment and just nodded anyways. It only took the group a few minutes to enter the courtyard outside. The crowd shouted as the graduating class entered but quieted up as the 3 second years showed up. The chunin instructor present for the taijutsu portion added a little bit of chakra to his vocal cords so the crowd could hear. Good morning everyone to this year's graduation display. This year is a little different than usual as we have 3 second years joining us. In respect for their courage to do this so early, we will allow them to go first. Naruto almost laughed out loud at the jab towards them. He knew that the genin exam was considered difficult compared to those like Konoha, but it wasn't that hard. He sighed and pushed his arrogance down before refocusing. The 3 second years will start us off with the 3 academy jutsu. If you'd please step in front of everyone else and perform these jutsu. Seal less an amused aura radiated from the older children along with the chunin. The stands were filled with fangirl cheers for their dear Koku-kun along with a few fanboys for the 2 girls. Simultaneously, they all slammed their feet down and mud rose from the ground in front of them. They each formed a clone of one of them before, in a small poof of smoke, they swapped places. Another poof of smoke engulfed them as they turned into copies of 3 older students. The 3 turned towards the chunin and walked back. The chunin didn't look pleased in the slightest at the display and smirked as an idea hit him. I will be counting those rock clones as your clone technique only. You'll still have to perform an elemental ninjutsu. The 3 groaned and turned. Fine, just move out of the way. Kurotsuchi shouted as they started hand seals. Naruto was the first to release his attack as powerful wind blades whipped through the air onto the test dummies, slicing them to pieces. The chunin stared at him, wondering how he got the jutsu through his bandana. Kurotsuchi was next as she slammed her palms into the ground as if performing the summoning jutsu but instead caused an earthquake. The earth split open underneath the second dummy and sucked it in before closing back up. Deidara's chest rose up and she released a medium-sized wave of water from her mouth, hitting her dummy and launching it back. That good enough? Naruto wiped his bottom lip through his mask, removing a small bit of saliva that escaped during the jutsu. Yeah, you 3 just sit back and watch the others until the taijutsu portion. Asterisk a little while later finally, the ninjutsu portion was done and they could proceed to the taijutsu. Like Naruto predicted, the chunin sitting to the side raised a slight lip in a circle shape, forming a ring. You, Koku, you're first. The earlier chunin stood opposite the ring from Naruto and looked pleased to be fighting him. Unexpectedly, Naruto slipped into an unknown stance and waited for the match to start. The chunin rushed in and performed a few punches which Naruto either dodged or parried. The brunette boy got to the edge of the circle before jumping over the chunin, entering the center of the circle. You should know that evasion is my best subject. Naruto smirked, although the man couldn't see it. The next minute and a half were spent this way, Naruto evading the chunin, casually mocking him. Naruto got down to the final 10 seconds in his head and looked at the Chunin's fist going at him. He ducked under it and delivered a nice jab to the man's pelvic bone. If one listened closely, they could hear a small crack. Asterisk a few hours later, Naruto's kitchen Koku-kun. You broke the man's pelvis. Onoki looked at the former blonde with a deadpanned expression. Yeah well, he was kind of a dick. Deidara offered from the side, moving her new headband from place to place. It was currently tied around her head. That's besides the point, Deidara. Koku almost permanently paralyzed an ally. Onoki had a scolding tone in his voice, but they all knew he was kind of proud. So old man, who's our sensei gonna be? Onoki sighed helplessly before floating off to grab something to drink. I will be training you three personally, however whenever you three are on missions Kitsuchi will be with you. He enjoyed their shocked expressions. Now go to bed so I can finish some paperwork and start your training schedules. He watched the new genin run off and sighed. Those kids are always giving me a headache. A thought came to his mind, causing a smirk. They have to witness the world of D ranks tomorrow. I think I should double the amount before AC rank for them as well. A chuckle escaped his throat, making each genin shiver in their room. Next day, Onoki's office. The newly formed genin team stepped into Onoki's office with grins spread across their faces. The grins disappeared, however, whenever they saw the grin their cage held. It was one that promised physical and psychological pain. Welcome Team 1, let me quickly go over your new schedule. The cage threw out some sheets of paper which the genin caught along with Kitsuchi behind them. Starting tomorrow, you three will be waking up at 6 a.m. and training at Training Building 1 until 12. After that you will be taking D-rank missions until 6 p.m. You will continue this schedule until either me or Kitsuchi decide you're ready for AC rank. What about today then? Was the chorus amongst the squad. Today, you three will be doing nothing but D-rank missions until 6 p.m. Kitsuchi already has the file for your first mission. Since you three decided it was funny to harm an ally, you will be completing all D-rank missions for the net week without chakra usage. Now leave. The tone that Onoki used gave the genin the idea that there was no way they could get out of it. Very well, Tsuchikage-sama. They left the office and followed Kitsuchi down to the street. The older shinobi cleared his throat before speaking. Our first mission will be helping out at the construction of a new restaurant. It's near the northern border. He started walking his way there when Naruto spoke up. So us not being able to use chakra is not only a punishment but a way to increase our strength? Kitsuchi grew a grin similar to the genin's earlier ones. I'm glad you caught onto that, Koku-kun. D-rank missions in Iwa are different from how they are in other villages. Here, we use them as physical training, chakra training, along with teamwork training. Once this week is up you will see what I mean by chakra training. The girls off to the sides looked at Naruto a little angrily for finding out and not telling them first. This mission might take a good while, so you better stretch before we get there. The genin didn't like that idea. Konoha, Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in his office with a contemplated look on his face. It had been 5 years since the disappearance of Naruto and he had yet to hear anything. The Sarutobi had sent for his student, Jiraiya, but the man hadn't appeared since. How's it going, sensei? A new voice said from the window. The man had long white hair, a green short shirt kimono and matching pants, under which a mesh armor which was visible at his wrists and ankles. He also wore handguards, a black belt, traditional Japanese wooden sandals, and a red haori with 2 yellow circles on each side. Hiruzen turned so slowly in his chair that it caused a small creak in it. Jiraiya, was all the old man said in a low, dangerous voice. A bead of sweat formed on Jiraiya's forehead from his sensei's voice alone. If this is about those summons you gave me, then I must tell you that I was deep undercover in a village south of the Land of Fangs. Besides, it couldn't have been that important, right? Soon enough Jiraiya was against the wall with his sensei's hand at his throat. Naruto went missing. Is that not important enough for you? Your godson has been missing for 5 years. The Hokage had finally lost his cool, his presence was being released, causing multiple things to crack from the pressure. A whole other pressure blanketed the room. This one belonged to Jiraiya. Is that why you're threatening war with the other villages? Jiraiya was red in the face. Hiruzen released more of his ki, trying to silence his student, but it didn't work. Jiraiya slapped his sensei's hand away from his throat and jumped back into the window. Don't expect to see me again for a while. With that, he was gone. Look out. The little girl heard the voice and looked up from the ground. A beam from a nearby construction site was falling and it was only a few meters above her in the air. Suddenly, the girl vanished from sight. The beam almost crashed into the ground but was caught by a pillar of earth. Off to the side, one could see a team of genin. The only male of the 3 was cradling the girl from earlier in his arms. The 2 female genins had their hands on the ground, manipulating it to set the beam down on the street. That was a nice save, Koku-kun. The blonde girl complimented, turning to her male teammate. Said comrade didn't pay her any attention as he calmed the girl in his arms down. Now both female genin were staring at him while he set the girl down. The little one quickly thanked him while hugging his legs before running off. The girls looked at him, each one having a small blush present from seeing his attitude with children. Good save, you three. An older male voice said from the side. All genin turned towards their sensei with a smile. Does that mean we completed another mission? Asked the blonde girl a little impatiently. The man stifled a laugh but nodded. Yeah, you three completed your mission. Now it's time to go train. The genin grumbled slightly before following their sensei through the rocky town. It only took a few minutes until they reached a large building. Unlike other villages, Iwa trained inside of arenas and chakra-fortified buildings so they could not be easily spied on. It was quite ingenious to anyone who paid any attention. Team 1 was now walking into the joint training center used for training high-level jutsu or joint training with other genin. Their team had started using that specific center whenever they started working on higher elemental manipulation. They all walked into the center and stood in the middle of the enormous arena. Do any of you realize what today marks? Naruto was the first to answer with an annoyed grunt. 5 months of being genin and our 50th D rank was today. Kitsuchi's smile widened and he nodded. I've got a reward for all of you for hitting that milestone. The man reached into his back pouch and produced 3 scrolls. He threw one at each student and gave an order. Go to the restrooms and open them. Return whenever you're done. 10 minutes passed and Naruto entered the arena. He looked different, however. His normal attire was replaced with the standard one for Iwa shinobi. His headband was held up by a red cloth on his forehead and he had a sleeveless red shirt, covered in a light brown flak jacket. The brunette's legs were covered in slightly baggy matching red pants that went down to his ankles, which were covered in fishnet, and brown sandals covering his feet. Unlike most Iwa shinobi, he didn't have a tail on his top. Tied to the lower of his back was a small black tanto. Kitsuchi looked at Naruto and laughed slightly. Naruto glared at the man. What's wrong? Do I look stupid in this thing? Naruto waved his arms around a little bit, which made Kitsuchi laugh harder. The older shinobi wiped a slight tear off his face and shook his head. No, it's just weird seeing you without a mask on. Your whiskers are very unruly and it looks like they're just pieces of hair. Naruto grumbled and reached into his kunai pouch, producing a plain red bandana. In a matter of seconds, his lower face was covered. What is taking those girls so long? Naruto wondered out loud. We actually have to make ourselves presentable, unlike you. A feminine voice said, faking annoyance. Naruto twisted his head and silently thanked Kami. He was wearing a mask to hide his deep blush. He took notice of Deidara first for an unknown reason. Her top was a red haori opened in the chest area, showing some fishnet armor. Holding the haori was a thick brown belt, holding her kunai pouch on her hip. The left sleeve of the haori was removed, leaving only her right. The flak jacket was on but was cut down a bit to show the top of her chest. A small skirt ending just above her knees led down to her legs covered in fishnet, and finally her brown sandals. The girl's blonde hair was in the same ponytail, leaving a single large bang over her red-clothed headband. Naruto ignored his small nosebleed and turned to Kurotsuchi, who was fidgeting for some reason. The Ravenette had adopted a modified version of Deidara's hairstyle. Her long hair was in a ponytail and only some small bangs rested on her red-clothed forehead protector. The girl's top was a regular V-neck red long-sleeve shirt with the right sleeve missing. Her cleavage was being covered by a piece of fishnet armor and her flak jacket covered up the bottom of the opening. Like Deidara, she wore a skirt but hers went down to her calf and had a cut across her left side to allow movement. The rest of her legs were covered in fishnet armor and led down to her brown sandals. The 3 genin studied their comrades' new clothes until Kitsuchi interrupted. Now you 3 look like proper shinobi. It's time to learn another jutsu before we go on our first C-rank mission. It's a simple C-rank jutsu used for sneak attacks. The man formed 6 hand seals before sinking into the ground. The genin felt slight vibrations behind them and saw their sensei standing there pulling his foot out the ground. As you can see, earth release. Subterranean voyage can be very effective. All 3 of you can use this effectively with your own specialties. Now, to perform this technique, you must pump chakra into the ground around you, turning it into a liquid for you to swim through. I'll show you the hand seals again. The genin copied the hand seals of their sensei and pumped chakra through their feet, into the ground. Naruto was the first to go under as he pumped a little too much chakra. The brunette sprang back out and landed off to the side, missing the piece of earth that was now liquid. That is the main problem with this jutsu. You have to pump just enough chakra to have the earth revert to its old form before the enemy can see it. As a little incentive to you 3, I'm willing to put up who chooses dinner for the next couple of days. Each one of them had a dreamy look on their faces, imagining eating their favorite food for days straight. Soon enough, they were back at work. Kitsuchi was watching them while practicing his own taijutsu kata. A few hours later, Kitsuchi stopped his practice and looked at the clock in the arena. He grunted as he saw that it was 5 p.m., there was only an hour until they had to go home for the night. He turned back expecting to see his students practicing their new jutsu, but saw them sitting in a small group off to the side taking a nap. Naruto was lying against the wall, snoring quietly while the girls were sleeping on his sides, each one with a hand on his chest. A stifled laugh escaped him before he left in a soundless shunshin to show Hatsume and his old man. A few moments later, all three adults reappeared and looked at the three genin. Hatsume giggled at the scene before pulling out a camera to take a few shots. This'll be great to show at their wedding. Both males snapped their heads towards her and stared. What? You don't mean to tell me you two haven't seen the looks the girls give Koku-kun and the looks he gives them? The looks that they held answered her question, causing a slight sigh. You two are clueless about anything that isn't shinobi related, aren't you? The men gawked at her but didn't deny it. They look like proper Iwa shinobi now. Maybe tomorrow during their mission they could get a name for themselves. Onoki said. I can't argue with you there, Pops. Kitsuchi said, a light chuckle escaping his mouth. This purity won't last for that much longer, so cherish it while you can. Hatsume said, slightly scarred for the genin. That is something every shinobi must lose to become great, a new voice said from behind them. The three turned and noticed their children were now behind them, each one halfway submerged in the earth. By the visible blushes on the girls' faces, they knew how long they were there. Kurotsuchi cleared her throat before speaking. I was the first one to get this jutsu down, so yakitori for dinner. That night, Naruto's room. Naruto sat at his desk staring intently at a scroll in front of him. Who would have guessed that his parents had been such interesting shinobi? He was currently reading a scroll containing the Raikage's own statement from whenever he went against them. Apparently, the two were able to hold their own against I and his brother B. What made Naruto even more interested was that B was the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi or Eight Tails and had perfect sync with the Biju. I wonder if I can get like that with Kyuubi? He wondered before standing up and turning off his lamp. The former blonde pulled his bandana off and set it on his bedside table before turning in for the night. About half an hour later, the boy finally fell into blissful sleep before being pulled into his mindscape, that is. Naruto's eyes caught the familiar trees of his mindscape and groaned heavily. He already knew what called him there, so he just laid in the grass and called out, Hey Kyuubi, what did you interrupt my sleep for this time? The Uzumaki heard a cackle from the fox before his voice answered. I've summoned you to meet with Yanbi and Gobi. They want to meet you before you go on a potentially lethal mission with their Jinchuriki. Naruto sat up quickly and stared at the fox laying in the grass across from him. Wait, what? A few gears in Naruto's head clicked and he gasped slightly. I always wanted to know why they had so much chakra. The two sat in silence while Naruto processed the new information. A few minutes later, he spoke. So which one holds which? Kyuubi's snoring was now audible, which made Naruto grow an irk mark. He formed a mental snowball in his hand and threw it at the creature. Kyuubi released a strange yelp before looking at his Jinchuriki. What do you want? His voice was more coarse than normal, showing just how deep into sleep he was. I asked which one holds which of your siblings. Kyuubi took his sweet time stretching before answering. Your blonde vixen holds Gobi and your ravenette vixen holds Yanbi. Naruto ignored the nicknames because he was used to the teasing at that point. I guess that explains their chakra differences. So why don't you take me to your siblings already? After the last word left his mouth, he found himself in a pure white world. He wasn't surprised by the three fully sized Biju in front of him, but the fact he wasn't blinded by the white light. He snapped his thoughts away from the interesting room to the Biju in front of him. So, you two wanted to meet me? The horse dolphin thing known at the Gobi nodded and the monkey grunted. Not that much of the vocal type 1C, so you two want to share your names? A laugh escaped from Yanbi. I see you're a very straightforward individual, Koku, or shall I say Naruto? Naruto shrugged. You can call me either, seeing as no one can hear you in here. Gobi cleared his throat. So Naruto, what are your plans for Kyuubi's power? Naruto expected that one. I haven't really thought about it that much. I know it can be very useful in a pinch, but I'd like to be powerful enough on my own to not rely on him. Gobi offered no reaction but instead asked another question. What would you do if you had the chance to gain all of Kyuubi's power without having him controlling it? That question Naruto did not prepare for. I'd be skeptical. I mean, you all have had multiple Jinchuriki and none have ever figured that out. Are you saying you'd like to be first? Gobi pushed harder. You know I hate it when people put words in my mouth. The answer to your question is no, I would not like to be first. Despite him constantly taking away my precious sleep, he's good company and I wouldn't know the first thing about controlling Biju chakra without a conductor such as him. Last question, what are your intentions with our Jinchuriki? Naruto was expected another logical question but not one that sounded like some girl would ask her dad's girlfriend. A deadpan look grew on his face as he stared at the mighty beasts. Suddenly after a few minutes, the beasts burst into laughter. He sounds just like you, Kurama. Yanbi bellowed. Kyuubi looked at Yanbi like he just murdered his kitten. Now it was Naruto's turn to laugh. You took all that time building up a challenge for me to learn your name and I just learned it from your sibling. Naruto was hysterical at that point. This kid is already growing on me. So much so, I'll share my name. Naruto perked up at the giant monkey. I am the Monkey King of the Sage, and the great sage equaling heaven. Son Goku. Naruto looked at the monkey and then back at Kurama. Why didn't you tell me he had a bigger ego than you? The two Biju growled at Naruto while he just smirked. Gobi certainly enjoyed it as well considering his smirk. So Gobi, are you willing to share your name yet? The horse thing shrugged slightly. Kukua. Unlike my idiotic brother, I have no titles. Son Goku launched a Bijudama at the dolphin horse which he simply sidestepped. So, can I go dream about something already? I want to see if I can get a lucid one. Yep, he's definitely picked up some of your personality, Kurama. Son Goku mentioned as he watched the boy begin to dissolve from the mental scape. See you later Kukua, Kurama, son. The boy waved. Son Goku grew a grin as he decided to test the boy's memory. Call me by my titles Naruto. He called out. The brunette human turned back towards the three Biju and grinned. Isn't just son good enough? Yanbi imagined a redhead man behind Naruto saying the exact words. This redhead was his former Jinchuriki and his current Jinchuriki's uncle, Roshi. Next morning, I was East Gate. Naruto stood by the massive stone gates with a scroll in his hand. He was reading while waiting for Kitsuchi to show up with their first C-rank mission. Normally, a squad would go into the cage's office to get a mission but apparently the old man had a headache and didn't want the Uzumaki to irritate it more. To the right of Naruto was the two girls playing a game of cards. From what Naruto had seen, they were playing blackjack and Deidara was winning. He felt Kitsuchi's presence behind him along with a man beside him. Naruto closed his scroll and put it in his pouch while turning. Good morning. He greeted simply while studying the man. He had a standard lanky build, black hair that was light parted, a blue kimono, and green eyes. From Naruto's observation, he wasn't a fighter but most likely some kind of messenger from a politician. This is Azuma Atsushi, our client today. He is a messenger for a tacky politician and we need to escort him there from the normal robbers and bandits. Sometime during his speech, both girls had risen and formed a line behind Naruto. We better get going before the bandits get active. Azuma said. The shinobi present nodded and they began to escort him down the dusty road. With Onoki, Tsuchikage Tower hallway, the short old man sighed heavily as he walked down the hallway to his office. He knew he shouldn't have eaten the spicy yakitori but damned if it wasn't good. The moment he opened his office door, he knew something was off. He couldn't feel the usual stares of his hidden Anbu and tension filled the air. The moment he saw who was in the chair across from his desk, he knew why. There in the chair sat Jiraiya of the Sannin with a giant scroll leaning against his desk. Onoki flew over to his desk and sat in his chair. He knew the man wouldn't pick a fight with an aged kage in the middle of their village so he most likely had a reason. What is it you want, Jiraiya? The white-haired man cleared his throat before speaking. I simply want to know how my godson is doing in his new life. It didn't take a genius to figure out who he was talking about. Naruto-kun has taken a liking to this village and made many friends along with a few enemies. I do remember him having a few fangirls as well. The last part gained a smirk from the Sannin. I would like you to give him this scroll for me. I know I can't be a part of his life now but I won't let him be weak. I'll be keeping an eye on him with my spy network. With that, the white-haired man was gone. If you had asked Team 1 what their least favorite mission was, you'd think they'd answer with a D-rank mission but their opinion was slowly changing. They'd been walking for 5 hours now with their client and not a thing had happened. There were no bandit attacks, no rogue shinobi coming out of nowhere, or even a bird flying down the road. Naruto was tempted to just pick up the client and run full speed to the destination but he knew that wouldn't bode well. Keep your eyes open, you three, we're about to enter a bandit hotspot, Kitsuchi said quietly, his hand resting on his kunai pouch. The genin followed their sensei's example and soon enough Naruto could feel the ki coming from the rocks. From what he could tell, there were 15 bandits in total, and none of them had access to their chakra. The boy found it weird that he could figure that out but pushed it off into later thought. He was about to enter battle for Kami's sake. Suddenly Kitsuchi started talking to them casually. So you guys got that jutsu from yesterday down pat, right? Well, how about we add in something new, Kurotsuchi, place a genjutsu on the opponent that puts a mirage of you and your team while the others use the jutsu to take them down. After that, the enemy will be caught in the genjutsu so you can go in also. The genin understood the message and followed suit. Kurotsuchi put the false surroundings genjutsu on the area and the other two sunk into the ground. Once the genjutsu took hold, she heard Naruto shout. 15 bandits on the rock formation tower 7 o'clock. None of them can use chakra. Keep one alive for interrogation. Deidara shot through the ground like a bullet and hopped out the ground. Both her hands covered in medical chakra, forming chakra scalpels. She had to take a fairly deep breath before rushing into the group. Naruto ran up to the bandits with his tanto in reverse grip. From what he could tell, he and his team were in a three-point pincer at the moment. He knew bloodshed was going to follow, but he had seen plenty in his life. One last breath and his blade was swung out, towards a jugular vein. Azuma watched on in slight horror as the 10-year-olds decimated the bandits. Each of them cut through the fully grown men like they were butter. Naruto with his tanto, Deidara with her chakra scalpels, and Kurotsuchi with a plain kunai. If 10-year-olds could do this, then he didn't want to know what the man beside him could do. A few more seconds passed before the team walked out of the crevice and dead brush, dragging a single bandit along. The man was pelted with blood, but it was nothing compared to the genin. The worst thing that Azuma noticed wasn't the piece of jugular stuck on the girl's kunai but the lack of any emotion in their eyes. Excellent job you three, now I'm going to leave the interrogation up to you since you came up with the idea. Kitsuchi said, a pleased smile playing on his face. Naruto groaned and motioned for the girls to put the bandit against a dead tree at the side of the road. Tie him up and put some incisions on his wrists. I'll leave the incisions to you, Deidara-chan. Naruto instructed before going still, which they guessed was him preparing to interrogate him. Once the man was tied up, the incisions were made and he was taken out of the genjutsu. His eyes flew open and they studied the genin for a moment before he tried lunging at them, only to be stopped by the rope. Oh, you fucking bitches. You killed them all, didn't you? It was obvious the man knew what shinobi were capable of. Yes, we did. Now listen up, Naruto said in a cold tone, crouching to the man's eye level. Your ulnar veins were slit roughly 15 seconds ago, so that leaves roughly 45 seconds before you bleed out, so I suggest you answer my question fast and efficiently so my friend here can heal you up. Deidara nearly scoffed at the movie-like explanation. Even if the man's arm was taken off he wouldn't bleed out that fast, but the fear of death was a good motivator. Back with Naruto, the man had begun stringing out curses. You got 30 seconds left and I haven't even asked my question yet, Naruto reminded him with an annoyed tone. Fine. What's the question? The man barked out, his survival instinct kicking in. Who sent you? The man didn't even have to think before his answer came out. No one sent us. We just heard a rich guy was coming through here. Naruto nodded at the answer before turning to Kitsuchi, who nodded. Naruto's right arm came out quickly, severing the man's jugular. Alright, now we know there isn't some coup going on or a rich guy trying to take over a nation, let's continue. Kitsuchi said, walking away before Naruto shouted after him. What are we gonna do with the bodies? Do we bury them? Kitsuchi snorted, they're bandits. They've killed and raped enough to not deserve a burial, but you can put them in an unmarked grave if you like. The three genin moved all the bodies into a pile before Kurotsuchi used the rupturing earth palm to drop them underground. Once they were finished, they began their travel again. After a few minutes, Kitsuchi spoke up. Sorry about how cruel I acted earlier, but I've seen some things bandits can do and I hold no remorse for any of them. The genin understood once they heard the small pained tone their sensei used. It's all right, sensei, we understand, Deidara said before pulling out a piece of candy from her pocket. Want a lollipop to make it better? Kitsuchi chuckled but took the piece of candy anyways. Azuma was officially scarred after their interaction. The three kids had killed 15 people, the brunette male interrogating one before walking off and putting all the bodies in the earth. The blonde girl had offered up a lollipop like she wasn't killing people minutes before. We should be at the destination in an hour at civilian speed. Azuma-san, would you like one of us to pick you up and travel there at shinobi speed? It would cut it down to at least 40 minutes, Kitsuchi asked. Azuma shook his head. No thank you, whenever we get there I have to be presentable for our lord. The shinobi shrugged and they kept their pace. A few hours later Naruto and the two girls were sitting in a circle on the bed of their hotel room. Apparently their clothes being soaked in blood was bad for business and they had to shower, so Kitsuchi got them a room at a hotel. Right now they were just waiting for their clothes to dry while they wore the backups kept in their pouches. A few minutes ago they had started to play Go Fish with the cards Kurotsuchi kept. Hey Deidara-chan, you got a King of Hearts? A shake of the head later and Naruto got himself a new card from the deck. It carried on like this for a little while with little variation until their clothes were done and they had them sealed up. The trio returned the key to the desk before heading to the Lord's palace to meet with their sensei. They caught sight of said sensei a little later going down the street. Once they were reunited, Kitsuchi led them to the side and told them of their mission. Well guys, I got some good news and some bad news, which one do you want first? Bad, was the group reaction. We already have another C-rank mission and we're gonna be gone from the village for at least a few more days. Good news is that we're getting paid for it and it goes on our mission record. Seems like a double positive to me. So what's the mission? Kurotsuchi said with a shrug. We got to deliver a sensitive message from this lord to the capital. If we leave now holding a high genin speed then we'll be there in 3 to 4 hours, but we're gonna need to stay there while the message is processed and wait until we're dismissed. Naruto clapped his hands together and rubbed them. I guess we know what Koku-kun is doing when we get there. Deidara joked. The brunette boy always wanted to go to the legendary blacksmith up there. That's what you're all doing when we go up there. I've been meaning to do it for a while now, but when we get there you're all going to pick a weapon or request one to be forged. Two-sama has already given me the go-ahead to get whatever for you three. When we get there, Kai-san is going to be giving each of you special kunai and shuriken that are specified for one of your elements so it's easier to channel chakra into them. Yes, I am forcing you to pick up another specialty. Koku-kun already has his tanto, so you two girls will be picking something new. I'm doing this because I don't want any of you to fall in battle at the hands of some kenjutsu user that can easily go around a simple kunai. It made a lot of sense in the main scheme of things. Fine, but Koku-kun has to pick up something else with us. Kurotsuchi blew the bang out of her face. I'm not making him pick up a new weapon, but I'll make sure he starts a new jutsu field besides nin and tai. Naruto released a steady groan. He'd get them back for that one. Let's get going then. By the time Team 1 got to the capital, most of the shops were closed and they were tired from the long day, so they got some hotel rooms. Kitsuchi shared with Koku while the girls shared one. The next morning they all met up in the cafe attached to the hotel to get some breakfast before heading out to the blacksmith shop. They stopped outside and admired the tall building covered in many ribbons before Kitsuchi pulled them in. The place was wonderful in the minds of the genin. The walls were covered in shelves of weapons, glass cases lined the perimeter and some cases sat in the middle of the room. Naruto immediately went over to the tanto section while the girls just wondered. Kitsuchi walked up to the counter where a small button was present. He pressed it and in a few minutes a giant of a man stepped out covered in soot. By that time, the genin were behind Kitsuchi looking at the man. By their surprise, the man moved over and out walked a tall old man with spiky brown hair and a dark kimono. It's been a while, Kai, taking on another apprentice? Kitsuchi asked, gesturing to the giant. Indeed, but unlike the others this one has competence and a fairly good eye for weapons. Anyways, what do you need? The old man asked, sitting on a stool behind the counter. Two-sama sent me out to get some specialized kunai and shuriken for my genin along with a weapon of their choosing. Kitsuchi said, pushing his genin forward. Kai just nodded along. What are your affinities, children? His coal-colored eyes stared at the children. Futon Naruto answered first. Kaden Kurotsuchi. Raiden. Deidara said last. They all took notice as the giant man took the notes down on a pad. How many, Kitsuchi-san? The ape-like man asked. 200 each, 100 shuriken and 100 kunai. The man nodded before heading back through the doorway. Now what about these weapons? Got any ideas, kiddos? Kai asked. I'd like a straight double-edged tanto with a round guard, please. A pointed pommel would be nice as well. Naruto said, his feet tapping the floor. He was obviously nervous. Kai found this amusing. You got a preference about the grip material? Naruto nodded. Shagreen would work perfectly, although I'd like it to be dyed black. Kai wrote it all down on his notepad before turning to the girls. Kurotsuchi cleared her throat. I'd like a karambit, please. Kai offhandedly wondered if the girl knew how brutal the karambit was before turning to Deidara. Two-sai would be good, thanks. Kai nodded at the simple response before reading his notepad aloud. 100 futon shuriken, 100 kaden shuriken, 100 raiden shuriken, 100 futon kunai, 100 kaden kunai, 100 raiden kunai. A straight double-edged tanto with a round guard and a pointed pommel, a karambit, and a pair of sai. All with shagreen grips dyed black. Kitsuchi nodded at the order, and it sounded about right to him. 500, Ryo is your final price. Since you all have manners, I threw in the extra shagreen for free. Kitsuchi's eyes lit up at the last part. Shagreen wasn't cheap, and to think they got extra for free from good manners made his inner cheapskate feel good. I'm glad I went to the bank last night, the man mumbled as he grabbed a scroll from his pouch. There's 550,000 in there, use the extra for some guides on maintenance and such. Kai took the scroll and put it in his kimono. Your order will be ready in a month. I'll inform Tsuchikage-sama when it's ready for pickup. With all four shinobi saying thanks, they left the shop. So what are we gonna do now? Naruto asked out loud. There's only a few other things to do in the capital this time of the year. Check out the foreign vendors, gambling, and get a tour of the city. The three genin didn't hear the last part, their mind was set on gambling. 2 days later, Team 1 sauntered into their village, each one with a smile on their faces. It was a great honor to be kicked out of the casino for winning too much after all. They'd also been banned from that casino, but at least they got their money back from buying their weapons. They all walked to the Tsuchikage Tower and into the office to tell the old man of their success. Tsuchikage-sama, Team 1 reporting. Kitsuchi announced once entering the room. Onoki waved his hand and waited for his son to begin speaking. Our first mission was a success, and we managed to make some revelations while completing it. Each of them managed to successfully take down a group of 15 bandits efficiently without injury and saved one for interrogation without my commanding to do so. I have made the revelation that Koku-kun is both a censor and a very capable squad leader. He took control whenever the bandits neared, informing each of us in their numbers, locations, and access to chakra. With my help of providing a strategy, they successfully took them all down and interrogated one, which was led by Koku-kun. The girls played a big role too. Naruto chimed in from the side. Once Kitsuchi-kun gets done with his report, I'll make sure to get your accounts as well. Onoki said to the genin plural. Kitsuchi cleared his throat and continued. Our second mission was a success as well, although there were no interactions with combatants. We were able to order some weapons from Kai's. I got 100 kunai and shuriken for each based on their main affinity. Koku-kun got a tanto of his own design, Kurotsuchi-chan a karambit, and Deidara-chan a pair of sai. I also ordered some maintenance guides for each weapon. After we left Kai's, we went to the Red Heart Casino, where we proceeded to win 9 games of blackjack in a row and gain 700,000 ryo before being kicked out. The rest of our time in the capital was spent wandering and sightseeing. Onoki nodded at the report before speaking. Congratulations Team 1 on completing your first and second C-rank mission. You'll receive a pay of 120,000 ryo in total. Now, I'd like to hear about this strategy and field interrogation. Kurotsuchi-chan put a false surroundings genjutsu on the area before Koku-kun informed us both of the specifics and to leave one alive. Koku-kun and I used the subterranean jutsu to form a triangle around the bandits, with Kurotsuchi-chan rushing from her location. In roughly 30 seconds they were all dead except one. Koku-kun instructed us to tie him to a big dead tree and for me to put incisions on the man's wrists, breaking him out of the genjutsu. After the man was done screaming and cursing, Koku-kun informed him that he had 45 seconds to live as his ulnar veins were slit. Although it's untrue, it got the man talking about who hired him. Upon Koku-kun figuring out if he was telling the truth or not and getting permission from sensei, he slit the man's throat. Kurotsuchi-chan used her rupturing earth palm to put their bodies in the earth before we left. Deidara said, slightly out of breath after the giant storytelling. Onoki was impressed with how they handled the situation and nodded. Well, I commend you all for such a great and professional mission. I'll teach you all a jutsu tomorrow as a reward. For now, Team 1 is put on training rest for a week with D ranks every other day. Now go tell your mother you're alright before she hurts me. They all laughed at the end but nodded their thanks anyways. Oh Koku-kun, a package came for you while you were gone. I put it on your desk. It's a big scroll with the kanji for oil on it. Onoki informed the brunette. Naruto walked out of his bathroom still rubbing at his head with a towel. He hated it whenever his hair just wouldn't dry, and looked over to the kind of giant scroll sitting on his desk. His curiosity piqued and he threw his towel into the basket before going to grab it. Once hefting the giant scroll to his bed, he rolled it around trying to find the place to open it. After a little searching, he found a small seal on the side. He knew from seeing other sealing scrolls that this one was different. He didn't know what it was and knew how dangerous these things were, so he left to go get Kitsuchi. It only took a few minutes for the man to walk in with an apple in his hand. Once he saw the seal, his eyes were narrowed. It's a blood seal. I don't know who sent this, but they had to have access to your blood to even make this seal. If you don't mind, I'm gonna sit in here while you open it, Kitsuchi said, moving to sit on Naruto's stool. The younger brunette gulped and nodded. Since he no longer had his bandana on, He reached up and cut his thumb with his canine tooth. He smeared a little blood on the seal and the scroll poofed open to show a single piece of paper. Kitsuchi almost laughed at the overcompensation if not the serious tone of the situation. "Please read it aloud," Kitsuchi said, seeing the handwritten letter from his seat. Naruto took a deep breath and started. "Hello Naruto or Koku or whatever you go by these days. I doubt the geezer of a Tsuchikage told you who this is from, so I'll say it myself. My name is Jiraiya, Konoha's Gamma Sennin, and one of the Sannin. Most importantly, I am your godfather." Naruto stopped reading for a minute and let those words sink in. His godfather was one of the strongest on this planet, and yet Naruto had never seen him a day in his life. "Now I know you're probably angry, hell even outraged, about my vacancy from your childhood, but you should know that I have a good reason for it. The day you were born was also the day that your parents died, one of them being my student and Konoha's Yandaime Hokage. As you can guess, that put a power vacuum in the shinobi world, added with our losses from the Kyuubi's rampage. I spent maybe 5 hours with you before Sensei sent me out to make sure no other nations were going to attack us. I moved from deep cover to deep cover in each major and minor village. It was hardly a few days ago that I even got back to Konoha and learned of your absence. I know that my own absence was detrimental to your life and no excuse could ever fix that mistake, but I'd feel even worse than I do now if I didn't leave you with something. I am going to give you the name of your mother, along with some information on her, a few jutsu, and some helpful things. The giant scroll isn't just a useless husk, it holds the contract for the squirrel summons and it is now yours to keep. I do not know if the squirrels have a sage mode, but if they do, then I expect you to reach my level one day. On the back side of this paper you will find a seal matrix with all of the jutsu and helpful things I mentioned earlier, but before you go look at that I have 2 things to tell you. Your mother's name was Kushina Uzumaki and she was one of the most feared kunoichi to step on the battlefield besides Tsunade Hime and Mito Uzumaki herself. She was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki before you and she loved you so much. Both her and Minato were so happy to learn they were going to have you. Sorry about the rambling, but I'll get to the point. I will always be there to help you. I do not care if I have to betray Konoha or even kill Sensei himself. You're the most important thing in this world to me, and if you need my help there's a summoning jutsu in the rear scroll for me. Kitsuchi sat on his stool with his mouth gaping. Naruto sat on his bed with the same expression. They sat like that for a few moments before Naruto spoke up. "Well, let's see what the geezer gave me." He activated the seal and in a poof of smoke, many things popped out. There were 10 books in total, each one with a different title, and a small scroll. Naruto picked up the closest one and read the title aloud, Icha Icha Paradise. Asterisk. A few hours later, Team 1 training facility. It was now noon and a little bit of sunlight peered through the stained glass of the facility. Deidara and Kurotsuchi stood across from Naruto, who was holding a stack of books. Kitsuchi was standing behind him with his arms over his chest. "So what are we here for?" Deidara asked blandly. "I got these books and they're gonna be real helpful to each of us." He set the books down on the ground in a semicircle and motioned the girls to sit down. The girls studied the 7 books on the ground before looking back at Naruto. "Before I go talking about these, you cannot ask where I got these from or even start digging about it." With that, Naruto handed Deidara a light blue book. "This is a medical book written by Tsunade Senju herself. It includes everything from the basics to the master skills of medical ninjutsu." Deidara snatched the book so fast that her hand was a blur. Naruto chuckled and turned to Kurotsuchi. "This is a book about genjutsu techniques written by the Uchiha clan." Kurotsuchi snatched the reddish-black book and started flipping through pages. Once the girls were done being mesmerized by the books, they turned to Naruto and waited for him to explain the other books. Naruto grabbed a white book and said, "This explains a jutsu that turns your hair into a weapon in defense. It's commonly known as hair jizo or something of the like." He set it down and began pointing at books. "This one is for Earth Release. Swamp of the Underworld. This one is for Fire Release. Flame Bullet. This one is for Wind Style. Dust Cloud. Finally, this one is for Fuinjutsu, since you two wanted to force me into another jutsu field." The slight annoyance in his last sentence caused the girls to giggle and give each other a high five. "Sensei gets to choose what we do first," Naruto said sadly. If it were up to him he'd go straight for the fire jutsu. "For the next week I'm gonna have y'all work with those books." "No, not the ninjutsu books, Koku-kun." Naruto groaned as he pulled his hand away from the fire jutsu book. "I'm speaking of the books you were handed." "Deidara-chan, I'll go ahead and tell the hospital you might come in to help," Kitsuchi said, reaching down and picking up the ninjutsu books. "I'm going to hide these now." He was gone in a shunshin before he could hear Naruto curse at him. A week later, Team 1 once again sat at their training facility, waiting for their sensei's instruction. The man reached in his pouch and pulled out the white book. Today we're going to be learning the hair jutsu since it is a fairly simple jutsu. If you finish in a timely manner, then I'll teach you all a new Doden jutsu. The Junin opened the fairly thin book to the first page. Step 1 is to add chakra to the roots of your hair to grow it out. If your chakra control is not enough, then use these hand seals: tiger, right pointing arrow; horse, right pointing arrow; boar, right pointing arrow; ram, right pointing arrow; rat, right pointing arrow; snake. It took them a few minutes, with Naruto using the hand seals, but soon enough their hair was growing slowly. Keep practicing this until you can extend your hair to the floor and back in less than 5 seconds. It says as a side note that it is easier to just keep your hair long, so you can skip this process, but it is good chakra control practice nonetheless. It took the genin 3 hours to achieve the goal, but it was progress. Now pump chakra into the hair starting at the ends, up. Focus on making the ends sharp while doing this. Kitsuchi gave them a few minutes to do this before continuing. Make sure no one is around you and send a heavy pulse of chakra into your hair. Once the genin were safely distanced, they tried it and their hair was sent out in sharp needles. Much to their surprise, it grew back almost instantly. Kitsuchi upped his volume while he read it. If your hair was sent out in needles, then congratulations, you completed the needle hell jutsu. Now do all of the previous steps besides the pulse while guiding your hair around you. The genin tried it and their hair formed a barrier around them. Kitsuchi waited before reading the next part aloud. If you can hold this for 15 seconds, then congratulations, you've learned a B rank ninjutsu. Satisfied shouts came from the genin as their hair retracted and they did a group hug. Kitsuchi cleared his throat before offering some advice. Girls, the both of you should keep your hair at its normal length since your chakra control is good enough to extend it quickly. Koku-kun, you should keep yours at waist length. How you style it is up to the girls though. Naruto yelped at the last part as the girls rushed over to style his hair in different ways. Oi! What about the Doden jutsu? Naruto shouted while running from the girls. You get to learn that in a few days. I want each of you to practice this jutsu for a little while. You can't say you've got mastery unless you can do it quickly and efficiently. 3 days later, Naruto groaned as he plopped down on his bed, ignoring the multiple pins in his now long hair. It had been 3 days and the girls still wouldn't stop messing with his hair. He thought they were bad, but once Hatsume saw it, she freaked out and started telling him what shampoo to use. Onoki's reaction to his hair was his favorite though. The old cage had frozen at the sight of him and even muttered out a curse when he realized it was Naruto. When questioned, the man said his hairstyle looked like that of Madara Uchiha, and that's all it took for Naruto to like his new hairstyle. He began leaving his right bag over his eye to further freak out the elder. The brunette loved messing with that man. Naruto rolled over and spotted the giant scroll given to him by his godfather. His thoughts went back to whenever he first looked through all the books. The boy was glad that Kitsuchi was still reading the copy of Icha Icha whenever he found the book on the Rasengan and book on Hiraishin. Kami knows the man would have freaked out. Speaking of those books, they were hidden in his mattress courtesy of a kanai. Suddenly, Naruto remembered what the giant scroll was. With an extra rush of excitement, he rushed over and set the scroll on the bed before opening it. This time there was no plume of smoke and the scroll opened normally. Inside was multiple empty columns surrounded by a brown barrier and multiple drawings of squirrels, be them flying or regular. Naruto looked to the very right and noticed a name written down kind of messy, like a kid did it. He could barely make out the name, but it said, Itama Senju. Naruto was surprised. A Senju held this contract once. He was suddenly happy that he got Kitsuchi to keep quiet about the contract. A grin grew on his face. If a legendary Senju held this summons, then it must be very useful. Naruto bit his thumb and wrote down his real name before putting his fingerprints. He rolled the scroll up and took the cord to secure it around his waist before heading downstairs. Hey guys! Naruto shouted while putting on his sandals at the front door. It was Onoki that floated into the room. What is it, Koku-kun? The old man asked while looking at the big scroll that had a piece of brown paper, which matched the color, hanging on it. Onoki sighed and floated up while he waited for Naruto's answer. He tore the piece of paper off, revealing 2 kanji. Before he could read it, Naruto covered it with his hair. I'm gonna head to one of the mountaintops. I want to gain lung capacity with the thinner air. Onoki's eyes narrowed at the child's secrecy but nodded before floating away. Naruto ran out the door before using a shunshin to appear on a rooftop. Once there, he ran to the border of the village as fast as he could. A few minutes of running later and he was in a flat plain just outside the village. Naruto decided to try out one of the seals he learned. It was a simple barrier seal, but it worked. The brunette took out a brush and some ink from his pouch and wrote the seal matrix on the ground before activating it with chakra. The bluish-clear barrier formed around the entire clearing with its peak a couple hundred meters in the air. Naruto took a deep breath before going through hand seals, biting his thumb, and slamming his hand down while shouting summoning jutsu. With the amount of chakra put into the jutsu, Naruto figured he would summon the boss. The plume of smoke was big enough for a boss summon in Naruto's opinion. Once the smoke cleared and Naruto backed up, he observed the giant creature he summoned. The giant squirrel was about 56 feet tall and it looked like a normal brown squirrel beside two things. 1. The thing was wearing a blood-red haori with a black kanji for boss on the back. 2. It had a sword at its side. The summon rose on its hind legs, which at least doubled its height, and sniffed the air. "Who summoned me?" a surprisingly female voice asked. Naruto cleared his throat and added some chakra to his vocal cords. "I did." The boss looked down at him and went back on all fours. Her face was just a few meters from Naruto as she studied him. "What is your name, child? How did you get our contract?" The questions were rapid fire. "If I remember correctly, it's rude to ask for a name without presenting one yourself," Naruto said in a deadpan. The squirrel let out a weird sigh squeak before speaking. "My name is Reiki, the boss of the squirrel summons. Now, answer my questions." Her tone turned commanding during the last sentence and it kind of bothered Naruto. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki but I go by the name Koku Muranami so my enemies do not find me. I got the contract from my godfather, Jiraiya the Gama Sennin." Reiki did her sigh squeak and nodded. "Despite our lack of summoners, the squirrels still require you to take a test to see if you're worthy." Naruto nodded respectfully and waited for her to speak again. "Simply answer this. What is only obtainable once you have given it?" Reiki asked before resting her head on her front paws. The moment her eyes closed, however, Naruto answered. "Respect." The answer was short, sweet, and to the point. Her eyes creeped open to see if there was any doubt present on his face and smiled when there wasn't. "Correct, that is one thing that us squirrels cherish above all. Now, that you have earned my respect, I will give you the information you need as our summoner." She took a deep breath. "I would like you to know that our clan is quite like your shinobi system. We have teams put together based on their skills, be it stealth, reconnaissance, medical, or battle. Once our first summoner died in battle, we have made a rule that any summoner must have two personal summons, one being a medic, and the other being a warrior. Also, don't be surprised if any of my clan call you Taiko. Summoning is a very difficult thing, however, and it will take a while for you to learn how to summon different squirrels, so don't go trying to summon any specific kind before I can train you in how to do it. Also, I would like you to tell me what shinobi fields you use so I can inform my clan. You'll learn about me later on." Naruto nodded at his new summoning boss. "Well, I mostly use ninjutsu but I also work in the field of tantojutsu and most recently fuinjutsu. My affinities are futon, kaden, and doden." Reiki nodded at the boy before a seal matrix formed on the ground just below her paw. Out from the smoke came two normally sized squirrels, well, one normally sized. Naruto stared at the fat squirrel with bulging eyes. The thing was the size of his head. He turned to the normal-sized squirrel and studied her still white coat. "Go ahead and introduce yourselves to your new summoner. Koku-san, these two are going to be your personal summons from now on," Reiki said, watching with a slight smirk. The white-coated squirrel spoke first in a female voice. "I'm new. I'm a field medic that also uses Kaden Jutsu." Naruto nodded at the squirrel and turned to the second one. Naruto walked into the kitchen slightly tired from the previous day. After speaking with his new personal summons, they agreed to hide in his hair at all times since they couldn't leave his presence. Nu had spent most the night telling him about how the Squirrel Society worked and even have him a few tips for summoning. Today he was going to be reverse summoned by Raichi to train with her and be introduced to the entire clan. To be honest, Naruto had no idea how he'd keep it from his team, more or less his family. Once he sat down at the table, he noticed that the adults weren't eating and they had a "we need to talk" face on. The good thing was they were looking at all three genin and not just him. "So what's with the faces?" Deidara asked, putting some bacon in her mouth. "The Chunin exams are coming up and we have already added Team 1 to the list of genin going." Deidara choked on her bacon but recovered with some water while Kurotsuchi was squealing with excitement. Naruto narrowed his eyes, however, they wouldn't have that face for a normal Chunin exam. "What else is there?" he asked, setting his elbows on the table. "We have decided that you three deserve to know a secret that we've kept from you all. One that Koku-kun already knows." Naruto coughed slightly and sighed. "Well, what is it?" Deidara asked, twirling her single bang. "You three are Jinchuriki, humans with Biju sealed within them. They are the reason each of you has such high reserves," Hatsume said, her voice soft and caring. Both girls scoffed. We've known about that for a while now. Although Koku-kun is a new one. Kurotsuchi answered for them both while casting a glance at Naruto. I told you that Yanbi and Gobi wouldn't just sit back like they did with Han and Roshi. Kitsuchi said in a slightly nagging tone. They're also kind of annoying and arrogant, Kurotsuchi said with a frown. Naruto scoffed, that's just Son. Kakuo is perfectly fine. Both girls snapped their heads to him instantly. I've met them before, so what? Naruto asked, munching on some eggs. So they did contact Kyuubi then? Onoki mumbled under his breath. Yeah, they ripped me out of my dreams before our first C rank. Both of them sounded like concerned fathers, but don't tell them I said that. A few seconds passed before Naruto groaned. Aw shit, they have access to your senses. Inside Naruto's head, he heard a shout of you little brat from a voice that sounded awfully like Son. Deidara leaned on the table, so what's it like having Kyuubi sealed in you? Do you get a Kekkei Genkei or something? Naruto pouted despite no one being able to see it. No, the stupid furball just takes all my sleep to talk. Onoki cleared his throat to put them back on track. Seeing how each of you knows of each other's status and understands your situation, we can move on. The Chunin exams are to be held in Suna 18 days from now. Those Suna bastards are planning to go hard on this exam, so we want to make sure you guys are ready for anything. We have 14 days until we must begin traveling to Suna, so every single one of those days will be training from 6 to 6. Also, Kai has shipped out your special kunai and shuriken on hold. Koku-kun's Tonto was already finished, so it's in the shipment as well. Sorry girls, but I won't let you go into the Chunin exams with a weapon you can't properly use. The female genin shrugged and Naruto groaned. I already have something planned for today. Onoki turned to the boy and narrowed his eyes. Does it have to do with you putting a barrier around yourself in a plane yesterday or the big scroll you were hiding? Naruto chuckled nervously while nodding. Yeah, it's a trump card that I've been working on. I want it to be a surprise when I get it down. Onoki sighed hopelessly. I could pull rank and have you tell me, but I have a feeling Hatsume-chan would throw her shoe at me for it. Sure enough, Hatsume had a sandal in her hand which was hovering over Onoki's head. But you have to be there tomorrow and the rest of the days. I'm only giving you today. Naruto thanked him before going back to eating breakfast. Half an hour later, Naruto was searching through his room, looking for a scroll he'd lost a few days before whenever he was reverse summoned. His eyes took a few seconds to readjust to the light, but soon found himself standing at the base of a giant tree. He saw Reiki beside him, even she was dwarfed by the tree, and looked around to see them surrounded by some much more normal-sized trees. He noticed that Reiki and himself were standing on a raised platform, and multiple different types, sizes, and colors of squirrels were looking at him. Welcome to Tatakai no Ki, Tree of Battle, the home of the squirrels. Please introduce yourself to your new clan. She extended an arm to the crowd. Naruto gulped and quickly added some chakra to his vocal cords. Ohio, I'm Koku Muranami, your new summoner. I hope that I can gain all of your trusts one day and become friends. To Naruto's surprise, the squeaks were of approval and Reiki had a smile on her face. Welcome to the clan, kid. Follow me so I can start your training. Reiki began walking into the husk of the giant tree. Naruto decided to ask a few questions while they walked. So why's this place called the Tree of Battle? Reiki didn't answer him until they reached the middle of the giant tree husk. This is where the past bosses of this clan fought for their title, so we call it the Tree of Battle. Nowadays it's just used for sparring though. Naruto watched as the boss summon pulled her sword out and set it on the ground. I have one last question before we start. Do the squirrels have a sage mode? Naruto asked, his curiosity active. Every summon has a sage mode, as our realms are all saturated in senjutsu chakra, but they're all different from the chakra of the animals, changing the senjutsu chakra in the air. Yes, you will be able to learn squirrel sage mode eventually, but your body is not matured enough for it yet. If you tried to even pull in an ounce of senjutsu chakra, you'd turn to stone since your chakra is fluctuating so much. She turned off her lecture mode with a quick deep breath. Now, before we begin talking about how to summon the different types of squirrels, let's speak of my abilities. Beside my kenjutsu, I use Raiden Jutsu, and I am a field medic. Now that that's over, let's begin. She clapped her hands together and Naruto groaned. The next day Team 1 stood in their training facility with Onoki and Kitsuchi in front of them. Now that Koku-kun is here, let's begin. For the next 13 days, you won't be learning any new jutsu but instead refining what you've already learned to a mastery level. When going through this, I want you all to remember that even the basics, if trained enough, can lead to the defeat of a great shinobi. Now that Onoki had incited his wisdom, it was time for Kitsuchi to get him going. Alright kids, we're gonna start with the very basics. Today we'll be getting down the Kawarimi, Iwa Bunshin, and the Henge. Once we have decided you can complete each in a good time, we will move on to taijutsu. The genin simply sighed and waited for more instruction for the boring exercise. Kawari me whenever you believe it is a good time to. Kitsuchi said, creating two iwabunshin and rushing them with chunin speed. He reared his fist back and launched it at their sternums. He actually felt their vests before they swapped with a log. All three logs cracked whenever Kitsuchi's fist met them and even flew away a few feet. Are you trying to kill us? Naruto asked from behind Onoki. No enemy ninja will pull their punches, so neither am I now. You three did good, so come back over here. Create an iwabunshin with no movement whatsoever. Not even the slightest tap of your foot is allowed. That slight tap would warn any perceptive enemy. The three genin trudged back over and tried their best to create a clone without movement. Naruto shifted his foot just a bit and Kitsuchi's head snapped to him. Don't think you're slick, I know you just created a clone. If I were an enemy, I would assume you're either moving into a taijutsu stance or using some kind of dotonjutsu. Either way I would rush to stop you. Kitsuchi's head then turned to Kurotsuchi, who sneezed. Kitsuchi grabbed the bridge of his nose and breathed out. This exercise is to make a clone without movement, not to hide that movement under something else or become more subtle with it. Onoki saw that his son was frustrated and floated up to help. Do it again. This time if I see any movement then I'll ban your favorite food from being sold in the village. That seemed like a good incentive to the children as they were concentrated. A few minutes passed and Deidara started shouting in excitement. You've done it, yes? Or do I have to ban your Bakuden? Onoki had a grin that threatened to split his face. Deidara went pale and shook her head. I got it, the clone's right behind you. Deidara pointed. Sure enough, there was a clone behind Onoki. Good job, now tell your comrades how to do it so we can move on. Next day, 12 days left. Onoki hovered into the Team 1 training facility with a giant scroll in hand. Kitsuchi stopped the kids' taijutsu fight and beckoned his father over. The old man dropped to the ground and rolled the scroll out in front of the genin. As you can guess, your weaponry has arrived from Kai, Onoki said, pushing some chakra into the seal, which resulted in 7 smaller scrolls popping out. Each one was labeled differently. Kitsuchi was the one that took the role of distributing them. He threw Naruto the 3 white scrolls, Kurotsuchi the 2 red, and Deidara the 2 blue. The one marked S as shuriken and K as kunai, as you can guess, Kitsuchi said, ignoring the glares. While the girls took out their new supplies and replaced them with their old ones, Naruto unsealed his new tanto. He threw the scroll on the ground while the sheathed blade landed in his palms. Naruto steadied the weapon from the pommel up. The pommel was a shiny red metal pyramid that seemed pointy enough to Naruto as his eyes wandered. The hilt was a black shagreen like promised with a braid-like pattern of white string going across it. The guard was a flat and undecorated circle, the same red metal as the pommel. The sheath was the same size as the handle with a perfectly bland black look. Naruto licked his lips before releasing the masterly crafted blade. With a very satisfying sound, the blade was released from its prison. Naruto almost let out a groan of appreciation at the sight. The double-edged blade was the same red metal as the rest, with a single white line going down the middle of the blade from the tip to the guard. Naruto figured the blade was at least 11 inches long. The last thing Naruto noticed was Kai's signature engraved in the metal. Soon enough everyone was studying the blade in silence until Deidara spoke up. You dropped something, Koku-kun. She picked up a piece of paper and held it out to Naruto. The brunette quickly sheathed the blade and held it in one hand before grabbing the paper. Naruto decided to not read it out loud, and he was glad he did. The secret about the blade would prove very useful. The letter read, Dear Koku, as you can notice, this blade is different from the others. It is like this because I mixed some futon and kaiten metal. I do not know if the blade can properly conduct both elements or just a boosted kaiten, so I'll leave it up to you to learn. P.S. I think it's more kaiten because of the metal color. Naruto held the paper between 2 fingers and turned it to ash. Onoki frowned at him and Deidara smacked her lips. Sorry, can't tell ya. It's a secret about my tanto. The cheeky grin on Naruto was almost visible through his mask. Kitsuchi sighed at the boy before speaking up. Alright, let's test out your kunai and shuriken. Each of you take 1 kunai out and add your element to it. The genin followed the order, and soon enough each had a kunai covered in elemental chakra. Kurotsuchi's was covered in a controlled flame, adding just a red hue to the blade. Deidara's was a dark blue with arcs coming out every few seconds, and Naruto's held a simple whitish light blue hue. Kitsuchi went through a few hand seals and created a 10-foot thick wall in front of the kids. Launch your kunai while keeping your element on it. The 3 deadly kunai were flung out and impacted the wall. Each one went through the wall like it was hot butter. Kitsuchi nodded at the effectiveness and pushed the kunai out the wall by reforming the tunnels. Each genin got their kunai back and awaited their sensei's order. Let's try your shuriken now. Do the same as you did with kunai but wait for my order to throw. They pulled out the weapons and pushed the chakra into them. Kurotsuchi's shuriken had the red hue but each point was connected with a string of flame. Deidara's shuriken had the same dark blue hue but each point was connected with a string of lightning much like Kurotsuchi's, and finally Naruto's held the same whitish light blue. Kitsuchi quickly gave the fire order and they watched as the weapons sunk in. Kitsuchi got the genin to retrieve their weapons before letting the wall down. The Junin was about to ask his father a question when he noticed the old man had left at some point. Well kids, I want to go over your jutsu repertoire one by one so I make sure I'm not missing anything we got to train. Kurotsuchi-chan, you start first, then Deidara-chan and then Koku-kun. Kitsuchi said, pulling out a notepad not unlike Kai. Well for ninjutsu, I know the Kawarimi, Henge, Iwa Bunshin, Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Doden. Dochu Senko. Doden. Retsudo Tensho. And Needlejizo. Genjutsu-wise I know Megan. Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu. Kori Shinshu no Jutsu, and Megan. Jubaku Satsu. Deidara cleared her throat before starting. For ninjutsu, I know Kawarimi, Henge, Iwa Bunshin, Needlejizo, Doden. Dochu Senko, Kaden. Ruka no Jutsu, Raiden. Jian, Sweden, Mizurappa, and Futon, Repusho. For medical ninjutsu, I know the Shozen Jutsu and that's it. Kitsuchi nodded while writing before turning to Naruto. For ninjutsu, I got Kawarimi, Henge, Iwa Bunshin, Doden. Dochu Senko, Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu, Futon. Repusho, Needlejizo, and Futon. Daitopa. For Fuinjutsu I know, Fuin. Bariashiru, and Shikoku Fuin. Kitsuchi was writing for a few more moments before putting his notepad away. Very good, I'm glad each of you are versatile in multiple elements. I will have to catch Kurotsuchi-chan and Koku-kun up to Deidara-chan later on but this is very good. Each of you can work with kunai and shuriken effectively, you have good teamwork, and can handle yourselves in taijutsu so it just makes it even sweeter. The three genin nodded at their sensei briefly before turning their heads to the giant clock in the facility. It's almost 2. Can we just work with our new kunai and shuriken to get used to M? Kurotsuchi asked, earning a nod from her father. Just don't hurt each other, you know on second thought do that so Deidara-chan can practice her Shozen Jutsu. The genin grumbled at him while forming a group. 13 days later Naruto's eyes stayed half-lidded as they trekked through the sandy place known as Kei's no Kuni. The amount of sand that had entered his eyes the past couple of hours was unimaginable. He was just happy that they were going at a shinobi's pace. It'd be stupid not to since all that were among them were shinobi. 19 shinobi to be exact, 4 genin squads and their sensei, 2 Anbu guards, and the Tsuchikage. Surprisingly, the other 3 genin squads were all the ones that graduated at the same time as Team 1 and each of them were arrogant. They acted like they were better than Team 1 simply because they were older. Deidara almost stabbed one when the female genin said Deidara looked like she should be playing dress up but she ended up being held back by Kurotsuchi who then got insulted and tried to kill them. In the end, Naruto was holding back 2 angry girls from killing their comrades. The brunette shook the thoughts and sand out of his head once he saw the giant gates, usually meaning a village was there. He took a deep breath and sighed. This was going to be a milestone in his shinobi career. It was now up to him and his team to fight tooth and nail to gain the not-so-distant rank of Chunin. It wasn't a big step by any means but it would help them all. May Kami have mercy on their souls. Once the sandy wind had toned down a bit, the Iwa Nin could see the Cage and some other shinobi waiting for them at the wall entrance. They entered a closer formation whenever they reached the gate to block the sand from hitting the cage. Come on in, I don't want each of you to stand in the sand while we speak. The Cage, Rasa, said walking into the opening between the giant walls. Once everyone was a good distance in, Rasa started formalities. Greetings to you all and welcome to Sanagakure. Thank you Tsuchikage Dono for allowing your genin to attend my Chunin exam. Rasa said, his head bowed slightly. Onoki returned the bow before speaking. Greetings to you as well Cage Dono, it truly has been a while since I've been in your village. Rasa beckoned them to follow him while he walked towards the village. Yes, the last time you were here we signed a peace treaty with you and Konoha. I must speak about that with you later on as well. One of the shinobi beside Rasa spoke. Cage-sama, would you like us to escort the genin and junin to their lodgings while you speak with Tsuchikage-sama? The woman held a polite tone whenever she asked. It is all right Chia, I wanted to speak with the genin once we got to their lodgings anyways. The Suna Junin nodded before falling back in line. Soon enough, the group exited the giant walls and reached Suna's gate. No words were spoken in the group while they traveled through the middle of the village until Rasa made a turn. Your lodgings are directly ahead, just head to the main desk and they'll take care of you. Now, I want to give some advice to the genin. Rasa stopped in front of the hotel and faced the genin squads while the upper-ranking Iwa shinobi stood to the side. You 12 are welcome to wander my village, just don't go anywhere you're not supposed to. I also have to share some knowledge about the exams to you all. These exams will be brutal and bloody. If you have not gotten your first kill yet, then you will most likely get it or die in these exams. Tsuchikage Dono, if you will follow me to my office, we have something to speak of. Rasa began walking off and Onoki floated after him with his 2 Anbu guards. The genin and their sensei walked into the hotel to get settled. Rasa's office. Rasa sat down in his chair and reached for a cup of water while Onoki took his own seat. So what is it you would like to speak about, Rasa? Onoki asked. Now that they were privately speaking, they didn't need formalities. The redhead cleared his throat before speaking to his elder. The council and I are thinking of dropping out of the peace treaty with Konoha and starting a full treaty with Iwa. By a full treaty, I mean a true treaty that isn't just us saying that we won't attack each other. I mean we trade everything from cloth, jewels, or techniques to the shinobi themselves. I have known you for a long time, so I am telling you this full-heartedly. Suna is in desperate need of this treaty. Onoki was shocked still in his seat. For Rasa to go this far, Suna must have been really desperate. What has driven you to this? What has Konoha done to make you this desperate? Onoki asked, his cage persona gone and his curious one engaged. I'll start from the beginning. Roughly 2 years after the end of the war, the Wind Daimyo started taking missions away from us and giving them to Konoha. 8 years ago the previous container of Shukaku died and Konoha sent out one of their seal users to seal the Biju again, hoping to get back good faith with Suna, they said. I had no choice in the matter since all of the council agreed and we have no seal users in Suna. Without my knowledge they sealed Shukaku into my unborn son and fled the village. Whenever my son was born, the loss of the Biju chakra from my wife killed her. Whenever I checked the seal from the little knowledge I have in the field, I noticed that the seal has no mental barrier at all and it was a simple seal you would find on a scroll keeping the Biju within him. The seal was so bad that Shukaku keeps the boy from sleeping and even tried to make him believe he was his dead mother. Despite treating the boy the best as I could, he still has moments where Shukaku takes over and it's lethal to anyone nearby. 5 years ago Konoha started invading my borders without reason or warning. It ended up in them killing 3 of my Junin and 2 Chunin. Whenever I tried to contact the Hokage about it, he simply denied it. Rasa was breathing heavily by this point. The rage within his eyes scared Onoki. After all, a rage-filled man knew no pain. Onoki decided to give Rasa some good news. I know the reason they were invading borders 5 years ago. Onoki said, getting Rasa to stare at him. 5 years ago their Jinchuriki left the village and they were trying to find him. The best part is that they never found it. Onoki said with a slightly smug smile. Oh, where did you learn this? Rasa asked, leaning on the desk. I learned it from the Jinchuriki when he came into my village. Rasa's eyes widened, he knew what that meant. Then you have 3 active Jinchuriki. Onoki nodded at the younger Cage before he heard a shrill laugh coming from him. That means that if we sign that peace treaty then we'll have 4 Jinchuriki on our side. 4 Jinchuriki against Konoha's 0. We dominate the fight before it even starts. Rasa let out another chuckle before regaining his composure. If you agree to make this treaty work then I will have it written up by the time you leave. Rasa said, getting up and holding out his hand. Onoki floated out of his seat and questioned the redhead. Is this the reason you called me here before the finals? Rasa nodded. That and I know your genin will make it to the finals so I don't see a reason to wait. Iwa's genin have always been some of the best in the nation. Onoki knew Rasa was kissing up to his ass but he didn't mind. He extended his hand and shook with his fellow Cage. Onoki turned to leave whenever Rasa spoke to him. I'm sorry for what your genin are about to go through but at the very least, those who survive will become good shinobi. Onoki nodded his head before exiting and joining his 2 Anbu outside. Let's go see what the kids are up to, the Cage said to his masked elites. With the kids of Team 1 after stopping the girls from killing their fellow genin again, Naruto led them into the village roads to explore. Well, it was more Naruto exploring and the girls thinking of ways to insult the older genin. Suddenly Naruto felt a surge of Biju chakra. He knew the girls felt it as well since they stopped bickering. That's my brother Shukaku, the one-tailed tanuki. If you feel that then he's having a tantrum. I'd suggest you go check it out, Kurama said, his voice actually with an edge to it. Naruto motioned for the girls to follow him before they took off. They found the source of the chakra to be a red-headed boy standing on a rooftop with sand surrounding him and a blonde teen across from him on the floor. The girl seemed older than Team 1, but she obviously wasn't a shinobi. Deidara-chan, check on the girl and take this tag with you. Put it on the ground beside both of you. Naruto shouted, giving the blonde a barrier seal tag. The brunette turned to Kurotsuchi. Cover them up with a false surrounding genjutsu. If it doesn't work, then go make sure none of the sand hits them. Listen to everything Sun says. Naruto ordered and rushed to the red-headed boy while the two females went to the downed teen. As Naruto ran, he began a jutsu. This one isn't complete, but let's hope it works. The Uzumaki thought as he swerved around the sand tendrils trying to kill him. The seal is on his stomach. Kurama yelled at him once he figured out what his container was doing. Just as Naruto got in front of the boy, his right-hand fingertips ignited with a purple fire. Gogyo Fuin. Naruto shouted as his hand met the boy's stomach and the sand fell lifeless. The brunette caught the younger boy and laid him down. He saw the barrier around Deidara and the downed teen fall while Kurotsuchi still stood in front of them with a fire-imbued kunai out. Kurotsuchi-chan, go find Asuna shinobi and lead them here. Naruto ordered until he heard a voice. That is unnecessary as I am present, Rasa said, appearing on the roof with a few Suna shinobi. The Iwa shinobi started sweating profusely at the sight of the cage. Do not worry, I will not kick any of you out of my village. I thank you for taking care of my children though, Rasa said, seeing Deidara still healing Tamari. I want you to tell me what happened here. I also want your name, Rasa said, looking at Naruto as he was obviously the leader. My name is Koku Muranami and we were wandering your streets when I sensed Biju chakra being released, so we came to see what it was. Whenever we got here, this kid was surrounded by sand and the girl was downed. I ordered Deidara-chan to heal the girl and put down a barrier seal. I then ordered Kurotsuchi to protect them with a genjutsu or a plain kunai. I went in and performed a Gogyo Fuin on the kid to stop Shukaku. Naruto explained, getting a nod from the cage. Very well, could you take the seal off of my son now? It was more of an order than a question, but Naruto did it anyway. The redhead didn't even flinch whenever he pulled the seal off. It seemed Shukaku wasn't bothering him at the moment. You three come with me, leave my children here, in the Biju plain. Shukaku stood across from Kakuo, Sun, and Kurama with a slightly scared expression. So little brother, we notice you're tormenting your Jinchuriki again. Kurama said in a scolding tone. I just want to get out of the prison. Shukaku shouted in a childish tone. Surprisingly, it was Kakuo who responded. Little brother, if you work with your container and get him to allow you access to his senses, then you won't feel like you're in a prison. Plus you'll gain a friend along the way, and I know that's all you want. Kokuo's soft tone seemed to calm the tanuki down. Go and speak with your Jinchuriki. I will speak with ours to see if we can find a way to get you a better seal. With that, Shukaku left to speak with Lil Gaara. Cage's office team 1 along with both their sensei, plural, stood across from Rasa who sat at his desk. Onoki took a deep breath and groaned whenever he heard what his genin had done. At the very least, he was happy they didn't kill the Jinchuriki. Is there anything you require for this trouble? Onoki asked in a polite way. No, there is no trouble. I am actually glad that your students stepped in. I fear that my daughter would have been more injured had they not. So first of all, I thank each of you, but I would like to know Koku-san's current ceiling level. Naruto looked at both of his sensei and got a nod from each. I'm level 2 out of 10 right now. Naruto answered, getting a surprised nod from Rasa. To complete an A-rank seal at a normal level 2 is very impressive. The older redhead complimented. I am not a normal level 2, sir. I am level 2 in the Uzumaki's book. A smirk played on Rasa's lips. I am surprised that you were able to get your hands on such a rare book. Rasa turned his attention to Onoki. I'd like to make a deal with you. Whenever Koku-san is at a good enough level, I would like him to fix the seal on my son as a sign of goodwill. 2 days later, Team 1 walked into the testing area and noticed they were one of the first there. It was a giant square room with a few chunin lining the wall opposite to the entrance. The genin decided to move off to the right of the entrance and lean against the wall. Did either of you read my note? Naruto asked, looking at the two girls. Both nodded and pulled 2 tags from their pouches. Have one of those on your bodies at all times. I put enough chakra into them that just the smallest bit will activate it. Deidara put her tag on her arm that was covered by the sleeve and watched in slight amazement as the seal transferred from the tag to her skin. Kurotsuchi followed Deidara's example before putting her tag back in the pouch. Let's just keep to ourselves until the exam starts. I don't feel like dealing with idiots today. Deidara said before pulling out her medical book. Kurotsuchi pulled out her genjutsu book so Naruto pulled his seal book. As they read their books, more genin squads flooded in. About half an hour later, a Junin walked in. "All right, everyone, shut up and listen," the man shouted. The genin's chatter stopped and all eyes rested on him. "Before we start this part of an exam, these Chunin will give out waivers that each of you must sign to move on. We must have these waivers signed in case one of you dies in the exam. It is a simple contract saying that if you die your home village can't request anything." After the Chunin had passed out the waivers and a piece of paper to each team, the Chunin waited for the genin to sign and pass it back to them. It was then that the Junin spoke. "Those slips of paper that each team was given is the location that you must go to start your first exam." The Junin pointed at a map that was now hung against the wall the Chunin were at earlier. It was a map of Sanagakure but with certain parts marked. "Study this map and let every one of your members see the location. I will give you all 5 minutes to study this map before you leave for your location. One member of your team must stay here however." Many genin gave resistance to it but were quickly shut up by their comrades. With Team 1, they were trying to figure out who would stay. "I'll stay here, I'm not the best at memorizing maps anyways," Deidara said with a shrug. Her 2 comrades just nodded and studied the map even more. After the time limit was up, the 2 members from each time ran to their location. Deidara stayed leaning up against the wall until the Chunin called over all the remaining genin. Suddenly walls rose up around the genin and a gas quickly entered the box, knocking them all unconscious. With Naruto and Kurotsuchi the 2 genin got to their location which was a tower just southeast of the village center. Once they entered, they noticed a Chunin already there. "Please wait here for the exam to begin," the Chunin said before jumping up to the rafters of the tower. Naruto and Kurotsuchi waited for roughly 20 minutes before the Chunin from earlier jumped back down from the rafters with a Konoha genin on his shoulders now. Once the Chunin set the genin down, he jumped back up and a voice started on the speakers. "As you notice, there is an unconscious genin in front of you. This genin is a part of the team that holds your comrade. You must interrogate the genin to find out your comrade's location and rush there before your comrade gets too injured or even killed. Do not start until I say so. The unconscious genin are only being held down by a light sedative and some rope around their appendages. You must properly secure your genin before you interrogate them. You may now begin." Naruto pretty much flashed to the unconscious Konoha genin and started securing him with ninja wire, his speed being fueled by the thought of Deidara being harmed. "Kurotsuchi-chan. Use Megan Jubaku Satsu on him when he wakes and make it to where he can see me in front of him," Naruto ordered in a fast manner before setting the boy up to one of the metal pillars. Once completely tightened down, Naruto slapped the genin awake and Kurotsuchi started the genjutsu. The Konoha shinobi woke up being trapped by a tree. He began trashing until he saw the genin in front of him. "Tell me the location of your comrades or you lost your manhood," Naruto threatened with his wind-enhanced kunai to the boy's crotch. "And I'll slowly cut off your ear while he does it," Kurotsuchi said in a sickly sweet tone while coming out of the tree above him. Both Iwa genin had their eyes glowing with Biju chakra at this point and the Konoha genin was scared shitless. "The southwest water tower," he shouted, hoping to be let go only to receive a sliced jugular. Naruto and Kurotsuchi didn't even bother to mess with the genin's body as they rushed out of the exit. "Let Sun add chakra to your legs, it'll increase your speed," Naruto shouted as the 2 genin sped off at high Chunin speeds. While they were running, Naruto extended his sensing field to see what was happening with Deidara. "They're using physical torture right now. Deidara-chan is holding solid though. I'm gonna send out a pulse of chakra to get her to activate her barrier," Naruto said before sending out said pulse. Sure enough, he sensed the chakra barrier activate on the girl. Off to the side of his mind, he wondered why she didn't use Kawarimi. Once they were within a couple hundred feet of the water tower, he noticed the genin begin to get erratic. A Hyuga or a sensor, Naruto thought. A Hyuga cutting off Deidara's tenketsu explained why she didn't use Kawarimi. Naruto shook his head and quickly took notice of the thin metal on the side of the tower. "Use Kaden Ryuka no Jutsu whenever we get within range." Once they got within 10 meters of the wall, they began shooting out the flames, melting the side wall. Once Naruto knew the wall was completely melted, he motioned to stop the jutsu and hop in. Once inside, Naruto immediately took in his 2 opponents. Like he guessed, one was a Hyuga if her black hair and white eyes gave any hint. The other one looked like a regular genin with black hair and green eyes. "Kurotsuchi-chan, take on the male." "I got the Hyuga. Don't hold back, kill him." Kurotsuchi's normal pink eyes were now a blazing amethyst color as she rushed the male with a fire-enhanced kunai. Naruto pulled his tanto from his back and rushed the Hyuga. Usually it meant death to meet a Hyuga in taijutsu, but Naruto had a Biju to reopen his tenketsu if needed. The Konoha genin entered the Juken stance and rushed to meet Naruto. She threw a hit straight for Naruto's heart, but he sidestepped and grabbed her wrist. With a swing of his other hand, he severed it cleanly just below the elbow. The genin threw out a strike with her other hand, catching Naruto's right shoulder. Both genin hopped back out of each other's range. It was then that the Hyuga noticed that Naruto's tanto was throwing flames off of it, and it had some flames fly off like it was hit with wind. She also noticed that her arm was cauterized. Once Kurama took care of Naruto's closed tenketsu, he rushed again. The genin threw out her remaining hand and sent out an air palm. Naruto jumped high and threw his tanto at the girl. He formed a few hand seals and used a futon daitopa to speed the tanto up. Like Naruto expected, the genin was able to move enough to make the wound non-fatal, at least until he saw where it landed. The tanto was sticking out of her right thigh, just where the femoral artery was. A smirk split Naruto's face as he pulled his hand back, revealing ninja wire attached to a hole in his tanto's guard. The girl screamed bloody murder as her leg was considered useless and the clock began ticking until she bled out. In a last-ditch effort, she pushed all her chakra into her legs and jumped up to Naruto with her good hand holding out a kunai. The last thing she expected was Naruto using the kawarimi with her severed arm. Kaden Ryuka no Jutsu was the last thing she ever heard. Naruto watched as the charred body hit the ground and turned to ash. His mind quickly changed to his comrades and he turned to see Kurotsuchi holding a fire-enhanced kunai that was embedded in the Konoha genin's skull. Naruto quickly put his tanto away and rushed to Deidara. The barrier around her flickered out and he quickly cut the wire, rope holding her down. His eyes immediately went to her exposed stomach where they were carving at. Once he saw Kakuo start healing it, he pulled her into a tight hug. He felt Kurotsuchi hug Deidara from the side and they stayed that way until the chunin in the rafters hopped down. Once you three are done, follow me to your lodging until the next exam. Naruto squeezed Deidara once more before slipping out her arms and to her size. The genin put his left arm under her legs and his right below her neck before picking her up bridal style. Not that Naruto could see it, but Deidara stuck her tongue out to Kurotsuchi, who glared. Team 1 followed the chunin out the actual exit and down onto the street below. The woman led them to a building across the street and through the door. Once inside they noticed 3 field beds in a square room with a small bathroom. There weren't even any dressers. You will stay here until I come and get you for the second exam. Do not leave this room, and all you have to heal your teammate is what is in your bag. If the cameras catch you doing anything against those rules, then you will be disqualified. With that, she left the room. Naruto moved to said Deidara on the bed and pulled up her shirt to look at her wound. The vertical cuts were slowly coming together and the horizontal ones were already sealed. Thank you, Kakuo. Naruto muttered under his breath before sitting on the bed and letting out a deep breath. Both of you did a good job. Deidara-chan, you did great not letting any information slip. Kurotsuchi-chan, you handled both genin with great skill. He heard both girls let out "ah" before Kurotsuchi spoke up. You downplay your own role. You gave the plan for the interrogation, led us straight to Deidara-chan, and took down that Hyuga bitch mercilessly. Deidara sat up in the bed with a slight groan. Yeah, you did good, Koku-kun. Naruto thanked them both quickly before walking to the bathroom. I'm gonna take a shower and get the Hyuga's blood off of me. The 2 girls nodded at him and waited for the water to turn on to speak. Did you see the way he held me? Deidara swooned only to get a smack to the back of the head courtesy of Kurotsuchi. You sound like a fangirl right now, but it doesn't matter. I'm just glad you're okay, the Ravenette said, hugging her pretty much sister. Naruto was the first to wake the next morning. He got dressed but left his mask off for a bit. Once dressed, he started going through his pouch. Ninja wire, kunai, shuriken, barrier tags, explosive tags, an extra pair of clothes, some sealing scrolls, those paralysis tags I got from Kai, some ration bars and my seal book. He listed the items before strapping the pack to his leg. The brunette reached for his tanto and pulled it out, making the realization that he didn't clean it yesterday. Once observing the blade, it didn't have the normal signs that it had been dirty, and he figured the Kaden chakra burned away the blood. He sat on his field bed for a few minutes until he felt the usual tug, meaning Kurama wanted him inside his mind. Naruto made sure his body wasn't gonna fall over and traveled into his seal. He got inside and noticed Kurama resting in his normal place. So what did you want, furball? Naruto questioned, sitting on an invisible chair. Kurama opened his eyes slightly before speaking. I wanted to congratulate you on your mercilessness yesterday. I figure you have to be merciless whenever your blonde vixen's life is on the line, huh? Naruto ignored the fox's last quip and waited for the rest of what he had to say. Also, since you used some of my chakra yesterday, I'd like you to know a few things you can do with it. As you figured out, you can use it to enhance your speed along with using it in your eyes for a fear factor, but there are many other ways to use it. At that point the fox went silent for a few minutes. An irk mark grew on Naruto's head. What are they? He asked a little impatiently. You can use it to enhance any body part, and you could even use it when creating your barrier tags for a barrier that bites back. Since it's so corrosive to humans, you could put some on your hand and grab someone for torture purposes. Naruto nodded as he stored the knowledge away. Thanks Kurama, I'll leave you to your nap for now. Naruto went to leave only to hear Kurama tell him to wait. If you ever need to find someone again, just ask me and I'll help. Also, could you imagine a bed for once? Naruto chuckled and formed a giant dog bed with tiny foxes on it before leaving. Back in real world, Naruto opened his eyes back up to see both the girls tying their pouches to their legs. Did you replace your seal, Deidara-chan? He got a nod from the blonde before he stood up. Both of you changed in the bathroom, yeah? A double nod was received. Naruto put his bandana back on before speaking. Let's talk about our strategies again, Naruto said, waving the two over. Both of them sat on the second bed while he sat on the first. So with plan 1 They continued to talk for about an hour before the chunin from the previous day walked in. Follow me to the second exam. The three genin made their way after her and noticed that they were heading out to the desert. It only took them a few minutes to reach the desert outside the village. They were just at the edge of the giant wall whenever the chunin stopped. She reached in her flak jacket and pulled out a scroll, handing it to the genin. In this scroll is your target team. You three have to kill the target team and get their heads. You also have to kill and take the heads of the team that has you as a target. It does not matter in which order you kill them, but do not come back to the village until you have all 6 heads. You have 2 days to do this, and you must give me any water you have on your person, she said, holding her hand out. All 3 genin shook their heads that they had no water, so she nodded. Happy hunting was the last thing she said as she vanished into the sand-filled breeze. Naruto opened the scroll and sighed. We got another Konoha team, at least we know what to expect this time. In the scroll was just a picture of the 3 genin. From what Naruto could tell, there were 2 females and a male. Left to right, the leftmost female had long blonde hair and dull gray eyes. The middle female had short black hair and blue eyes. The only male had long hair tied up in a bun and small black eyes. Naruto's sigh turned into a groan. What is wrong with you? Kurotsuchi asked. Our target team has a Yamanaka, a Nara, and an unknown. The brunette said. So what? We're 3 Jinchuriki, so I think we've got an edge, Deidara said. Naruto muttered a true under his breath before mentally calling for Kurama. The fox responded with a groan. You said you could help me find someone, right? Well, I need help finding 3 right now. Kurama sighed through the mental connection. Give me a few minutes to gather the chakra. Once I'm done, your usual sensory field should double if not triple, the fox said. Naruto nodded and turned to his teammates. Kurama is helping me find the genin now, so just give me a few minutes. Sure enough, the genin stood still in the grainy breeze for a few minutes until Naruto spoke up. Holy shit, this is weird. You're lucky I know the chakra of the Yamanaka clan. This upgrade only lasts for 2 minutes max. The team you're looking for is about half a mile to your 2 o'clock. They seem to be making a camp right now, so I guess they're waiting on you, Kurama said, light fake irritation in his voice. Come on girls, Kurama says they're making a camp half a mile to our 2 o'clock. Naruto said, waving his arm before taking off. A few minutes later Naruto raised his arm signaling the others to stop once he caught sight of the fire in the camp. They all laid on the side of a dune, observing the 3 genin. From what Naruto could tell, the Nara was injured. We're gonna use the plan we used for the bandits. Kurotsuchi-chan, double layer the genjutsu if you can. Deidara-chan, use your Raiden Kunai for attacking. I don't want you using too much chakra for the chakra scalpel. Focus on the 2 clan members, they're the most dangerous, Naruto whispered. Kurotsuchi began weaving the seals for the genjutsu and slammed her hand down in the air whenever it was complete. Naruto and Deidara traveled through the ground while Naruto popped up behind the Nara. Deidara got behind the Yamanaka. Naruto's tanto just pierced the Nara's chest whenever the Yamanaka shouted out the genjutsu. She dispelled it just in time to get Deidara's kunai in the back of her neck. In a last-ditch effort, she turned and performed the Shinrenshin no jutsu on her fellow blonde. Deidara fell back for just a moment until Kakuo kicked out the foreign presence in her mind. She launched back up at the Yamanaka, who was trying to cover her wound. The Iwa shinobi pushed more Raiden chakra into her kunai, resulting in a chakra blade forming, extending the blade. With a slightly sickening noise, the Yamanaka lost her head. Back with Naruto, the brunette stood completely still behind the Nara with his blade still going through the lung. If one looked closely, they could see their shadows linked. "It seems you didn't know the danger of fighting a Nara in close combat," he said in a lazy tone. "No, I just wanted your pride to go up slightly before you realized the genjutsu was double-layered," Naruto responded, vanishing from behind the Ravenette boy. The Nara just saw Naruto's red tanto pierce through the genjutsu just before it met his neck. Life was troublesome anyways, was the last thing that left his lips. Naruto turned back around to check on his two comrades to see a fireball heading straight towards Kurotsuchi, courtesy of the unknown genin. He saw her begin the seals for Doden, Retsudo Tensho, and flashed in front with a shunshin. The brunette began the seals for Futon Daitopa just as Deidara appeared beside him, already going through hand seals for Futon Repusho. They finished their hand seals at roughly the same time and sent out the two jutsu straight at the fireball while the earth below began shaking. The two wind jutsu hit the fireball and launched it back at double size and speed. They heard a loud curse from the Konoha genin before some loud screams. Naruto just hoped the head wasn't too burned. Once the heat died down and the earth closed back up, the genin ran at where the Konoha nin used to be. They found him stuck in place with her arms in front of her head. Both arms were burned down to the bone, but her face was still slightly recognizable. At least her Konoha headband was still on. "Seal the heads and leave the bodies. The Suna Junin making these wind storms will come get them," Naruto said, throwing a small scroll to each girl. After they had the heads sealed up, they began moving again. "Where do we go now?" both girls asked in sync. "I want to make camp a little bit away from that one back there so we can lead the team hunting us there if needed," Naruto said before pointing at a little plain between some big dunes. They all got between the dunes and sat down. The wind wasn't really bothering them anymore, so they began having a normal conversation, or at least their normal. "For the next one, why don't we use strategy 3? Deidara asked, while cleaning off her kunai. "If you want to, it'll take a lot of chakra to do it in these conditions," Naruto said, looking at Deidara with an unsure gaze. Strategy 3 is where they throw a kunai with a barrier seal hidden on it at the group of enemies and wait for the barrier to activate before creating an Iwa Bunshin with half their chakra. They get around the barrier in a 3-point pincer and unleash jutsu into the barrier. Deidara uses her Raiden jutsu while her clone uses the Suiden jutsu. Kurotsuchi and her clone both send in a Kaden jutsu, and Naruto uses a Futon jutsu with his clone. The Raiden mixes with the Suiden and creates a deadly wave, while the Futon and Kaden mix to make a stronger fire. Whichever combined jutsu reaches the team first will kill them, but whenever the fire and water mix, they create a steam that still carries the Raiden. All of this happens within seconds, so it's fairly difficult to defend against. "I want to use that one too," Kurotsuchi said, flicking her kunai in the air and grabbing it once it dropped. "Alright, I'll keep up my max sensing field. We'll need to catch them in a group. You two can rest until I get something," Naruto said, placing his hands on the ground. A few hours later, night was setting in whenever Naruto finally got a metaphoric ping on his radar. "There's a group heading straight for us at high genin speed. They're at my 8 o'clock, Naruto said, pointing out where they were coming. "You sure that they're after us? Not like we don't have lots, but I don't want to use that much chakra for nothing," Deidara asked. It was Kakuo that answered her question, although her teammates couldn't hear it. "All three have intentions on killing an Iwa team with 2 females and a male," Kakuo said blandly in her mind. "And just how do you know that?" Kakuo didn't answer her question, so she just told her team. "Kakuo says that they all have intentions of killing an Iwa team with 2 females and a male, so I'm gonna guess they're after us." Both Sun and Kurama answered their Jinchuriki's unasked question. Kakuo can tell someone's intentions down to the fine detail whenever he tries enough. The containers merely nodded before heading off in a spear formation. "Tone down your jutsu just by a bit so we don't get unrecognizable heads," Naruto said, hopping over a big dune. The chorus of "hi" came from the girls while they ran. Once in seeing distance, Naruto noticed that 2 of the genin were from a clan. "We got an Aburame, an Inuzuka, and an unknown. I don't see or sense the ninja hound, so I think it was already killed." His teammates groaned at more clan members and began getting in formation. Naruto made sure they were ready with a nod before throwing the barrier seal kunai at the middle of the group. The group was about to separate whenever the barrier activated, although this time the barrier was a blazing red. The blazing red barrier was just a few meters across and a few meters tall. Naruto mentally thanked Kurama for the idea while he began going through hand seals with his clone. 3 holes opened in the barrier for the jutsu to enter. A few seconds passed as the jutsu came into the barrier before the holes sealed themselves. Naruto barely heard the Inuzuka shout Suga and slam into the barrier before his screams started. It's a bad idea to touch Biju Chakra. Naruto snickered as his clone entered the ground. Team 1 regrouped where Naruto was and waited a few minutes. After a few minutes, a small hole on the top of the barrier opened to let the electric steam out. Once the steam cleared, they could see 3 bodies on the ground. Naruto's earlier clone rose from the ground just beside the bodies and quickly moved to cut the heads off. He got the heads of the unknown and Inuzuka, but the Abarame's body turned to bugs whenever he tried to take the head. Naruto's sensing field immediately went out, but he couldn't feel anything. The Abarame counter sensors by making their bugs emit jammer-like chakra. It kills all sensory abilities except mine. The genin is hidden in the sand dune directly behind you. Naruto led Deidara and Kurotsuchi look around for the Abarame while he reached for a kunai. He's around here somewhere, find him, Naruto said, acting as if he was about to jump off before he threw the wind-laced kunai into the Abarame's throat. His sensory field came back almost immediately after the Abarame's life was snuffed out. All right, let's get going, the brunette said as his clone handed him the 2 scrolls holding the heads and the barrier kunai. Deidara threw the Abarame's scarred head at Kurotsuchi, who sealed it up. Team 1 had completed their objective and now they just had to return to Suna. We're going to Suna full speed. Use the Biju Chakra in your legs. Use as much as you can without being injured. With that they blasted off at mid-Junin speeds. It only took the group a few minutes to reach the giant wall surrounding Suna. They all jumped onto the first row and ran towards the nearest entrance to the village, which was the southern entrance. The red glow around their legs died down once the entrance was a few hundred feet away. The glow was completely gone by the time they got into the entrance. The Junin protecting the entrance looked at them curiously. Team 1 from Iwa reporting with the 6 heads needed for the second exam, Naruto said in a formal manner, holding all the small scrolls in his hands. The Chunin behind the Junin made a surprised sound. You guys are done already? You've been in the desert for 9 hours at most, the Chunin said. We would have been faster if we didn't wait for the team tracking us to finally get to us. Those bastards took forever. Deidara groaned while picking out her ear with her pinky. The Junin present had amused grins at that point. Come on in. Here will lead you to Keisuke-sama, the Junin said, pointing at the Chunin. The Genin squad nodded and followed the Chunin through the 2 walls. Do you 3 mind if we go at a low Chunin speed to get to the tower? The man asked, looking over his shoulder. It's fine, we're barely even tired from that little skirmish, Kurotsuchi said, earning a snort from the Chunin. I guess it's true that every generation will surpass the last if you think that previous exam was a skirmish. They took off at Chunin speeds through the village and towards the Keisuke tower. Keisuke's office. Rasa sat at his desk with all of his children across the desk. You may give your thanks to the genin that saved you whenever they get back from the second exam, Rasa said, looking at his bandaged daughter. Tusan, Gaara muttered, gaining everyone's attention. What is it, Gaara-kun? Tamari asked, placing a hand on his shoulder. Shukaku is trying to make friends with me. He says it's not a trick and his siblings told him to be nicer. His other family members gawked at him until they were interrupted by a knock at the door. Come in, Rasa called before the door opened to the Chunin and 3 genin. Team 1 from Iwa has completed the second exam, the Chunin announced, setting the 6 scrolls on his desk before leaving. The 3 genin stood there while Rasa and his family stared at them. So it only took you 9 hours in the desert? I commend you all for your speed, Rasa said, about to unseal the scroll whenever Naruto's hand stopped him. I wouldn't do that in front of your children, Keisuke-sama. Most of the heads are melted in places from our jutsu. Rasa nodded and set the scroll back down while Naruto backed up. You 3 can head back to your original lodging now. It's only 6 in the afternoon, so everyone should be up. The 3 genin bowed before beginning to walk away. Naruto stopped suddenly and spoke up. Oh, I wanted to ask how many teams were in this exam from Konoha. Rasa racked his brain quickly and answered. There were 3 teams at the start of the first exam, Rasa answered, getting a thumbs up from Naruto before they walked out. Rasa waited before turning to Gaara. Hey Gaara-kun, does Shukaku feel any of his siblings in those 3? Gaara stayed silent for a few moments before nodding. He says the ravenette holds the Yanbi, the blonde holds Gobi, and the brunette holds Kyubi. Rasa nodded at his son before speaking. The 3 of you can't tell anyone what Gaara-kun just said. I'm classifying it as a S-rank secret of the village. The children nodded before Rasa called in Baki, who took the children home. The cage unsealed each of the heads and looked at the damage done to most of them. Those kids certainly did a number on these guys. He mumbled to himself as he looked at them all. He then took notice of all the Konoha bands. Kitsuchi was beginning to settle down for bed whenever there was a knock at his door. Onoki, who shared the room with him, was also getting ready for bed, so they figured it was probably Asuna Shinobi or something. Kitsuchi got out of bed and straightened out his clothing before opening the door. The last thing he expected to see was Naruto cradling Kurotsuchi in his arms while Deidara was getting a piggyback ride. A snicker escaped his throat and he let them in. Onoki, on the other hand, found it hysterical and burst out laughing. His laugh turned into a coughing fit whenever he saw the Naruto carrying the girls was actually an Iwa Bunshin. After the old man settled down, and Naruto set both girls on a bed, he began speaking. So you guys finished the second exam already? The girls sat up and nodded with their teammate. Rasa only told us that it was desert survival with the goal of an assassination. Mind telling what actually happened? Kitsuchi asked, leaning up against the wall. Well, Deidara started. Once we were picked up from our temporary living space, we were taken out to the desert and given a scroll with a team's picture in it. The Chunin told us that we had to hunt down that team and return with their heads. Onoki was about to question why it took them so long when another voice started. But we had to return with the heads tracking us down as well, and we weren't allowed any water. Kurotsuchi said. Naruto butted in after, don't forget the Junin were creating sandstorms with futon jutsu. Kitsuchi kicked himself off the wall and whistled. That's a little overboard for a mission simulation, but I guess they want to weed out the weaker teams sooner than later. The three genin looked at him with questioning expressions. They've been doing that since the first exam. They all answered. But not to this degree. The first exam was a simple interrogation. Onoki said, earning Deidara to scoff at him. A simple interrogation, you say? Each team had one member taken and given to another team. Every team was in a different location and the two comrades had to interrogate the genin to find the location of their third comrade and get there before the third genin was hurt too bad or killed. It was a complete gamble. I'm just glad that the genin that interrogated me were a bunch of pussies and those two were able to get there fast. Deidara said, throwing a hand at her two teammates. Onoki was fairly surprised at that point. That explains why he said he was sorry about what you guys were about to go through. Both girls rose from their seating position and walked over to Naruto. You're carrying us back to our room, was the last thing they said before jumping onto him. Oh, old man, you'll be proud to know that we took down all three of the Konoha teams personally. Onoki just grinned at that sentence as the genin left. The next day, upon waking up and getting cleaned up, Team 1 headed out into the village to finally wander like they wanted to do before they found Gaara and Temari. While walking down the main road, Naruto noticed some food vendors. A few minutes later, all three were munching on some Suna dumplings. Naruto was eating through his mask, much to the confusion of everyone. It was a simple thing really, just move your hand quick enough underneath the mask and take a bite. It was Deidara's turn to drag the others away when she spotted a jewelry vendor. Despite common belief, kunoichi were still women, girls with their tastes. They might not be able to wear it during duty, but off-duty was a different story. Soon enough both girls were looking at necklaces and earrings while Naruto just looked at the male rings. The vendor noticed a plain silver ring caught his eye. "Ah, you have a good eye on that one, kid. People say it's made of pure silver to keep bad spirits away." Naruto had the decency not to scoff at the man. "It's all right, sir, I'm just looking while my teammates take their time," Naruto said, motioning to the two girls looking at a necklace. The vendor simply nodded in understanding and left him alone. After looking for a bit more, Naruto walked over to where the girls were and looked at what they were looking at. They were looking for a few more minutes until the vendor walked over. "If you three are looking for some necklaces, then I got just the thing for you. These are my most prized possessions. I think they're Uchiha necklaces because of their looks." The man pulled out a chakra-locked briefcase and opened it to show three necklaces. Each one was a single red tomo hanging off of an old cord with two golden beads on each side of the tomo. The biju in their heads went ballistic at the necklaces. Their chants were similar to buy them now. And finally they pushed their containers over the edge. "How much would you like for all three?" Naruto asked, reaching for his wallet in his vest. "I'd have to say 150,000 ryo since the Uchiha clan is dead now." Naruto's heart died a little as he handed the money over. "You can take the briefcase too," the man said, handing the whole thing to the brunette. Naruto took the case and bowed quickly before leaving. Once back at the hotel, they all filed into Naruto's room since the boy he was supposed to be sharing with was still in the second exam. Naruto set the briefcase on a coffee table before realizing something. How the fuck are we supposed to open it? It's a chakra lock. He quickly created an Iwa Bunshin to see if the vendor was still there. A few moments later, it returned and shook its head. A curse was muttered under each of the genin's breaths and Naruto pulled out his sealbook. He flipped to the chapter on chakra locks and began reading. The brunette read silently until he got to a good piece of information. Any chakra lock not made by a seal master can be overloaded with chakra, but it has to be a quick strong pulse or whatever the lock is holding will be destroyed. Deidara grabbed the briefcase and put a strong pulse into it, blowing it open. All three Jinchuriki reached out and grabbed one of the necklaces. Almost instantly, they were pulled into the shared mindscape. Whenever they opened their eyes, they found themselves sitting on top of their biju's head with a tall pale-skinned man floating in front of them all. He had deep wrinkles, a gray goatee, horns, 2 purple ringed eyes, and a third eye on his forehead. The man was sitting in Indian style on top of a few black balls with a staff across his lap. They noticed he had a necklace with 6 of those tomos from their necklaces. Father was the word that left each biju's mouth, each one with a different variant of emotions. It has been a while, Kakuo, son, Kurama. The man nodded. It was then that the man looked at the 3 children. Good evening to you 3. My name is Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of 6 paths, and father of Ninshu. The kids just stared at him blandly. I have no idea who you are, but you have some cool eyes, Gigi, Naruto said, looking into the ringed eyes. Hagoromo simply laughed at the boy. It is nice to be spoken to so casually. Now, let's get to the point of why you're here. Hagoromo stood up and slammed down his staff onto one of the balls, creating a giant black platform. I would like each of you to stand on this platform so I can tell you a story. The Jinchuriki hopped off their biju's head and landed on the platform. In a flash of white, their biju were the size of a house cat in their arms. The girls hugged their biju while Naruto just scratched Kurama under the ear, earning a purr. I see you know how to handle the big bad Kurama. Hagoromo snickered before getting a straight face once again. As much as I love to tell a good story, I believe showing you 3 would entertain you more. He waved his hand in the air, surrounding them all in an illusion. The 3 children got visions of a white-eyed alien woman, a bunch of people in a tree, a great battle between 2 men and a giant beast, the alien woman being sealed along with the beast, the biju being created, and finally the 2 men handing the red necklaces to their 6 children. Those necklaces you found belonged to my children and my brother's children. Those 3 knew what the necklaces were and forced you to buy them. The necklaces activated and brought me here because of not only your status as Jinchuriki but because each of you have ties to my and my brother's children. Naruto had a guess for himself, but he didn't know about the girls. How are Kurotsuchi-chan and Deidara-chan related to those children? Naruto asked, looking at the 2 girls who had their biju sitting in the lap calmly. Well, one of my brother's children settled down in what is now Tsuchi no Kuni. The Tsuchikages are a line that branched off my nephew. I will leave it up to you about what to tell them, Koku. Hagoromo said, getting a nod from the brunette. Tell us what? Kurotsuchi asked, looking at the boy she grew up with. Tell you that Koku is not his real name and that he didn't simply appear in Iwagakure. Kurama said for his container. He felt Naruto's glare on him and shrugged. It isn't smart to keep secrets from women, especially those close to you. They always find out. Kurama shivered, the picture of a certain blue fire cat in his mind. Naruto took a deep breath and sighed. As Kurama so graciously said, I didn't simply appear in Iwa. I abandoned my home to get there. You remember the scar on my chest that I said was a birthmark? Yeah, that isn't a birthmark, it's a scar from someone putting their hand in my chest. He was trying to kill me and was the main reason that I left Konoha. Touching on the name situation, my real name is Naruto Uzumaki, but I had to change it once in Iwa so Konoha couldn't come and find me. I was their Jinchuriki after all. Naruto looked at the girls and waited for a response. Well, you could have told us sooner, ya know. We gotta know who from Konoha we gotta kill. Deidara said with a sickly sweet smile. Yeah, why don't you tell us his name? Kurotsuchi asked, her own smile in play. Kakashi Hatake is his name. Naruto shrugged uncaringly. It might be good motivation, but he is leagues ahead of us at the moment. Off to the side, Hagoromo nodded. Do not forget, children, revenge is something that ends with 2 graves. Now, we're going to move past this little dilemma. Since I'm sure the girls want to know, Koku here is actually a direct descendant of me, as my daughter was the first Uzumaki. Kurama's groan filled the white room. Just hurry up and tell them what the necklaces do so I can go to sleep. The other 2 biju found this out of character for Kurama. I see your sleep is still more important than most things, Kurama, but you do have a point. I have been rambling for simply too long and I cannot stay in the plane for longer than 5 minutes. The wrinkled old man took a deep breath and started speaking. The necklaces amplify your connection with your biju along with whatever skill your ancestor had. For example, whenever Koku wears the necklace, his skill with seals will increase. For you girls, that means your Doden skills will increase. Farewell now children, I will see you all soon enough. With that, the Jinchuriki were ejected out of the mindscape, back into their real-life bodies. The three put on their necklaces and made sure it was secure. So what do we do now? Kurotsuchi asked, looking at her two teammates. Naruto shrugged. Wanna go mess with the old man? Both girls nodded and off they went to annoy the Tsuchikage. The next day Team 1 was sitting in the hotel's cafe, trying to get some lunch whenever the same female Chunin walked in. You are requested at the stadium, follow me, she said in monotone before walking off. Naruto chugged his chocolate milk before running after his two teammates and the Chunin. After a few minutes of walking, they saw a giant dome double the size of the Cage Tower. They had to walk up some steps but eventually they were in the stadium. The Chunin pointed to a pair of steps that led to the arena before walking off. Team 1 walked down the steps to find 4 other genin teams there. A team from Kumo, 1 from Kusa, and 2 from Suna. They fell in line beside the Kumo team and waited for the Cage to speak, who was on a raised platform in front of them. Hello everyone, I must first congratulate you all for surviving the first and second exam. He stopped speaking for the Junin sensei in the back to clap a little. But unfortunately we have an uneven number of genin and an even number is needed for the third exam. To combat this issue, we have created this quick preliminary. It will be a free for all between every one of you with the last 4 standing moving on. You can kill if you like but I doubt the Junin sensei will like it. The raised platform the Cage was on, dropped back to the ground and he walked off. Asuna Junin jumped down from one of the upper levels to proctor the match. I will call the match whenever a team is taken down. Hajime. The Junin was gone as soon as he appeared and all teams jumped back. Hey Rockheads, wanna work together on a Kusa team to make it all the great nations? A Kumo genin shouted. Kurotsuchi was the one that answered, get the agreement of the Suna teams and we'll do it. We're good with it. A genin from both Suna teams shouted. All genin nodded and rushed the now outnumbered Kusa team. A genin from the Suna team was a puppeteer and wrapped his chakra strings around the feet of each genin. From that point on, it was a bloodbath. One of the Kumo genin used a frontal decapitation with his sword. A Suna genin simply stabbed a Kusa shinobi in the throat and Naruto threw his tanto into the remaining Kusa shinobi's chest. The blade slammed in with such force that it broke a few ribs as well. Naruto pulled his tanto back with its connected wire and quickly cleaned the blade off while the Junin jumped down. Well, that settles that. You 4 are going to the third exam. I'll let Cage-sama explain. Rasa walked back in and simply stood in front of the genin instead of using a raised platform. The third exam will be an offense and defense trial. You 4 will be split into 2 factions who will battle to the death. Since you are all sensible, I'll allow you to pick your comrades but remember in the real world, you won't be able to pick. As many expected, the 2 Suna teams stuck together while Iwa and Kumo came together. Now that you're in your factions, I must give you the details fully. Since the Chunin exams are a show of power, we must wait 1 month for all the nobles and such to get here. However, this month is a blessing for each of you. In this month, you can train with your new faction and spy on the abilities of your enemy. Do not get caught spying because if you do I'll kick you from the exams instead of letting the faction kill you. The 4 teams all nodded in understanding at the last part. As I said earlier, the last exam will be an offense and defense trial. In this very same stadium, there will be 2 buildings, each one for a faction. To win the final exam, you must either kill all your enemies or completely level their base. That is all you 12 need to know, so have a good day and go get ready. Both factions walked in opposite directions and their sensei followed them. A few minutes later, Team 1 found themselves in a cafe with the Kumo team. You guys look young, did you graduate early? The sensei of the Kumo team asked. The Iwa genin nodded while looking at the dark-skinned and white-haired man. You look pretty young to be a Junin sensei. Naruto commented. Darui sensei was only appointed Junin a few months before our graduation, the female said. Kitsuchi didn't even bother speaking to the other genin, he knew he'd have nothing to do with this either way. Hey Darui-san. Wanna go do something while we let the kiddies talk? Kitsuchi asked, getting a smile from the Kumo Junin. Yeah sure, let's go. While the Junin sensei walked off, Naruto studied every one of the Kumo genin. There were 2 males and a female in that order from left to right. The leftmost male had dirty blonde hair, piercing black eyes, and fairly tanned skin. His outfit consisted of the normal white Kumo vest covering a one-piece battle kimono which was the same color as his eyes. The genin's feet were covered in white sandals. Naruto also identified this one as the sword user that performed the frontal decapitation, if the sword on his back didn't already say that. The middle male had unruly black hair, green eyes, and dark skin. He was wearing the same Kumo vest over a black hoodie jacket. His legs were covered in loose black pants that led down to white sandals. The female had a fishnet shirt underneath her kumo vest and simple anbu-like pants leading to white sandals. She had a weirdly greenish hair color, blue eyes, and fairly pale skin. All of them had white banded headbands tied to their foreheads. So I guess we can just do our names and specialties. We can get into the specifics whenever we're training later, Naruto said. The other genin nodded and the female from Kumo volunteered to go first. My name is Uemura Koya, I'm the team's taijutsu specialist. The dark-skinned genin decided to go first. I'm Yamasaki Shinju, the team's ninjutsu specialist. Next up was the light-skinned male, the name is Nishimoto Avaroi, I'm the team's kenjutsu specialist. After the group shared a few handshakes, Naruto began. My name is Muranami Koku, our sensei made us pick multiple fields so I specialize in ninjutsu, tantojutsu, and fuinjutsu. I'm also the team's captain and strategist. Deidara went next. Gushiken Deidara, I specialize in ninjutsu and medical ninjutsu. Kurotsuchi finished her sip of drink before introducing herself. Chisaka Kurotsuchi, I specialize in ninjutsu and genjutsu. Their elder genin each let out a groan and a sigh. How old are you guys? Shinju asked, hoping that maybe he could keep some of his pride if they were 12 or something. We're all 10. Shinju fell back comically and the other two Kumo genin shook their heads. Excuse me for a moment, I gotta use the restroom, Naruto said, walking off to the bathroom. Once inside, he locked the door and quickly performed the summoning jutsu. Into the world came 5 small sand-colored squirrels. Hey guys, I need you to track down and watch the group that has this scent. He pulled out a piece of cloth that he found on the ground at the arena. He saw it getting cut off when one of the Suna genin got a little too close to Avaroi's sword. The next morning Team 1 stood in a training facility located in Suna. In front of them were their tired-out Kumo comrades. They didn't get the big deal as they'd only been training for 2 hours. You guys really need to up your stamina, Deidara said, occupying her time with a card flip. Come on, give us a break, we only train for an hour each day before doing some missions. Their younger Iwa counterparts laughed at them. Our usual schedule was 6 to 6, 6 hours for training and 6 for missions. We usually change them out daily, but for the last week before heading here we did 12 hours of nothing but training. We trained every single jutsu we know how to use, Kurotsuchi explained. The 3 Kumo genin paled at the thought of training that much. We had the Tsuchikage personally pick apart our henge until we had it perfect. He did the same thing with our Iwa bunshin and projectile throwing, Naruto said, a slight shiver passing through his body. You guys must have a pretty good relationship with the Tsuchikage for that. Reikage-sama has only spoken to us when we graduated and giving us missions, Avaroi said, finally standing up. We're his grandchildren after all. Well, Koku-kun is adopted but he did raise him too, Deidara said, offering a sneaky smile. And that explains your freakish training schedule, Koya said, but Deidara just waved it off. We should get back to training now, Naruto said, reaching into his pouch and pulling out the barrier kunai. I guess we should show you 3 a couple of our strategies. First, we're gonna do Deidara-chan's favorite. We call it the 3 o'clock special. Both of his comrades nodded their heads at the name and Kurotsuchi laid down a seal less genjutsu on the area, excluding the Kumo genin from her field. Naruto shot to his 3 o'clock while Deidara ran behind him. The blonde and brunette returned a few minutes later with 2 people over their shoulders. Over Naruto's was an obvious puppet and the other, the obvious puppeteer. Naruto raised his hand and pulsed his chakra, getting the usual female chunin to appear beside him. We found this guy in the northeast corner, he was using his puppet as a recorder, Naruto explained, setting the puppet down beside its unconscious user. Yeah, I saw it, kid. I'll go give him to Kazekage-sama. She grabbed the puppet and its user before leaving in a plume of smoke. Once the two had returned to the circle, Naruto began speaking again. Anyways, the real name is Strat 3. I know it's not very creative, but in the second exam we used it to kill an entire squad. I'll let Deidara-chan explain it before we show you how it looks. Naruto flung the barrier kunai to Deidara, who caught it. So we use this kunai here, she waved it in the air, which has a barrier seal hidden in it. We throw it in the middle of a squad, trapping them in while we create a 3-point pincer around it. Each of us creates a clone before shooting jutsu into it. The jutsu mix inside, killing each person in one way or another. Naruto shrugged at the non-descriptive explanation and motioned for Deidara to throw it so they could perform the move. The bluish-white barrier surrounded the kunai and the 3 members of Team 1 moved around it with a clone. They didn't even call out the jutsu as they went into the barrier, each element mixing with another. Soon enough it was down to the electric steam swirling in the barrier. They dispelled their clones and looked at their new faction members. The Kumo team had ranging expressions from fear to disappointment to even jealousy. Do you guys have any strategies to share? Naruto asked as he watched the steam escape the barrier. The genin shook their heads in the negative, making Team 1 sigh collectively. Let's call it quits for today. I'll come up with a strategy that the 6 of us can do, Naruto said, walking towards the building's exit after collecting his barrier kunai. Once outside, Naruto let out a groan. It's so painfully obvious that we're gonna have to kill them when we're done with the other faction, but they're so weak that we'll end up I5, Deidara said, leaning against the wall beside the door. Naruto ran a hand through his hair and sighed. Let's just keep up the act for the next month. By that time we should know the weaknesses of everyone while they don't know ours. We gotta go to the hotel. I've got something to show you too. The girls were curious about what he had to show them, so they followed. They got into the room and 2 little fur balls jumped out his hair. One was giant and brown while the other was small and white. These are my personal summons. The white one is new, she's a medic, and the big brown one is C, he's a fighter of sorts. Naruto explained, ignoring the now dubbed C's glare. Ah, they're so cute. Both girls gushed at the 2 and began petting them. Naruto sighed in satisfaction as he no longer had them in his hair until he heard a scratch at the window. He went to open it and the earlier 5 squirrels came in. Squad 5 reporting, Taiko. The leader squeaked. Naruto ignored the girls gushing and nodded for the squirrel to continue. We have gotten the basic information for each of them. Since one of them got taken away, I'll let you know about the other 5. Among them are 3 females and 2 males, each of them are in different fields. The blonde female is a puppeteer in training. The brunette female uses nothing but futon jutsu, and the red-headed female is tactician that uses a field knife. Both males have brown hair but they have different facial structures. The one with the rounder face is a genjutsu user and the other is just taijutsu. From what we've seen, he refuses to use any other jutsu type. Naruto nodded at the information and quickly thanked the team. I'll summon you again tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day. The 5 disappeared in a plume of smoke and Naruto turned back to the girls. He chuckled slightly at the sight of both of them with a squirrel on top of their head. Naruto had to guess the medics stuck together as Nu was on Deidara. Since we aren't keeping secrets, Kurama and I came to the decision to tell the both of you my full heritage and where I got those jutsu books from. You might want to sit down for this one. The girls sat down on the bed beside him and the squirrels jumped down from their heads to their shoulders. So which do you 2 want to learn about first? Naruto asked, bringing his left leg over his right to where his ankle was resting on his left thigh. Considering we're learning from those books, knowing where they came from would be nice, Kurotsuchi said, pulling out her genjutsu book and fondling it. Deidara nodded her agreement before Naruto started. Whenever we got back from our C ranks, the old man said that I had a big scroll in my room. Whenever I looked at it, it was locked with a seal I didn't know of, so I called Kitsuchi-sensei in. He told me it was a blood seal and sat in there while I opened it. After I read the attached letter, I unsealed another seal to find 10 books in a small scroll. You already know what 7 of those books are, so I'll tell you what the other 3 books in the scroll were. One of the books was called Icha Icha and Kitsuchi-sensei took it before I could find out what it was about. The other 2 were jutsu that my dad made and the scroll was a test to see if I could use the Kekkei Genkei of the Uzumaki clan. Oh, and I also found out that the giant scroll was actually the summoning contract for the squirrels. Deidara blew on her bang while looking at him. Okay, but that doesn't explain who your parents were or who sent you the package. Naruto grumbled slightly under his mask. Yeah, I'm getting there. The person that sent me the scroll was my godfather, Jiraiya of the Sannin. The girls slightly gaped at him. Who the fuck were your parents to get a Sannin to be your godfather? Deidara shouted, fully surprised about it all. My mom was Kushina Uzumaki, Konoha's Red Death. My father was Konoha's Yellow Flash and Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze. They both died a few hours after I was born, protecting me from a rampaging Kyuubi. The next few seconds were filled with silence until Kurotsuchi spoke. So Kurama killed your parents and you're still buddy-buddy with him. Also, why did Gigi raise his worst enemy's son? The girl was spitting out questions at rapid fire. Well, Kurama was under the influence of a Sharingan-induced genjutsu. I don't know the exact reason the old man didn't kill me, but my guess is that Tusan wasn't an enemy but an opponent and someone who was simply following orders of his superiors. Naruto answered. So you have a book explaining how to do the Hiraishin? Deidara asked in an almost excited voice. Yeah, I looked at it a little and I have to be a level 8 in seals before I can use it. The Rasengan on the other hand is a simple chakra manipulation, but I'm gonna wait until after the exams to learn it. You think you could teach us the Rasengan too? Kurotsuchi asked, her puppy eyes already in place. Naruto hated that face with a passion. They'd goaded him into so much with it. He glanced over to see that Deidara had the forbidden jutsu activated as well. Fine, I'll teach you both the Rasengan after I learn it, but let's go do something else. I don't feel like sitting here for the rest of the day. Naruto said, standing up and cracking his back. His two personal summons jumped back into his mane. You never told us about your Uzumaki Kekkei Genkai, Deidara said, leaning back on the bed. Oh yeah, the Kekkei Genkai is called adamantine sealing chains or just simply chakra chains, Naruto said, shooting out a small golden chain from his lower back. The chain split and wrapped around both girls. They tried to break out and even tried using chakra, only to find it didn't work. My Ka-san used these same chains to hold down Kurama whenever he was being sealed in me, so have fun with getting out. Naruto waved at them and began walking away. I swear if you walk away then I'm telling Gigi about the time you stole his smokes, Deidara shouted, making Naruto stop in his tracks. The chain quickly retracted and Naruto was looking at Deidara like she killed his dog. How about we act like Deidara-chan never said that and we go pester the old man? Naruto asked, his eyes sparkling in a plead. The girls nodded and they walked out the room to find the Tsuchikage. After a few minutes of searching, they found him in the cafe eating lunch with the Kazekage and his kids. Hey old man! Naruto shouted while walking in with a wave. Onoki almost choked on his water at Naruto's casual disrespect in front of the Kazekage. The Kazekage and his children seemed to find it amusing. So what are y'all talking about? Deidara asked, standing at the side of the table with her team. We were discussing your team's brutal takedown of your enemies whenever my kids showed up and decided to eat with us, Rasa answered simply. Mind if we join? Kurotsuchi asked, moving to grab a chair. Go ahead and join us, but I'd like you to introduce yourselves to my kids since you did save two of them, Rasa said, motioning for his kids to introduce themselves as well. Once the three were standing, they all bowed and started giving names. I'm Muranami Koku. My name is Chisaka Kurotsuchi. Gushiken Deidara, nice to meet ya. All six shook hands before the Suna children began. I'm Tamari. The blonde teen said. I'm Konkuro. The boy with makeup said. I'm Gara. The red-headed Jinchuriki said. Once that was all over and done with, they all sat down. Now, we were discussing your strategy whenever you fought in the first exam. Asterisk a month later Team 1 stood next to Kumo's Team 9 just in the entrance to the arena. They'd been working hard for a month, coming up with strategies and getting ready to fight together. Unbeknownst to the Kumo squad, Team 1 was coming up with strategies to take down their temporary comrades. They'd wait until the proctor told them to fight, pretend to refuse before killing them. It was a simple and effective plan, especially if they kept up their act. Come on guys, we can do this, Deidara encouraged, slapping Koya's shoulder. Yeah, we've trained for this, Shinju shouted, thrusting his fist in the air. Both factions report to the middle of the arena. A voice said over the speakers. Showtime, make sure to follow the plan, Naruto said, clapping his hands. While Team 1 vanished in a seal-less shunshin, Team 9 followed quickly with a single seal shunshin. They both appeared in the middle at relatively the same time, each of them using a puff of smoke. The 5 Suna genin just walked onto the opposite side of the field normally. They were all lined up facing each other. Behind each team was a small castle-like stone building. Naruto knew who created it since he'd seen the old man float out complaining about his back. From now on, the faction with the Kumo and Iwa Shinobi will be known as Faction A. The Suna teams are now Faction B. Kazekage Sama will now speak. All eyes turned to the giant balcony where the Kazekage was standing. Sitting in thrones behind him were the Raikage and the Tsuchikage. Welcome all to the final exam of this year's Chunin exams. The cheers roared up for a few moments before they fell again. Unlike the previous Chunin exams held in other villages, ours has had a 90% mortality rate. However, this is because we are training these Chunin hopefuls for the real world of the shinobi. The bloody, gut-wrenching world that all shinobi know of. For the civilians watching, if you do not like seeing bloodshed then I suggest you leave because there will be death on this day. Now the battle can begin. Hajime! Rasa shouted, initiating the final battle of sorts. The 11 genin rushed at each other. It was obvious that none of them were looking to win by destroying the enemy's base. Many clangs of metal were heard and the shinobi jumped off into their individual fights with one of the Suna nin having 2 enemies. Naruto versus Tactician Naruto met the Suna shinobi Tanto to field knife, each of them up close. Today is the day you die, Iwa shinobi. The tactician growled, pushing on her blade more. Naruto simply grinned under his mask. You're not a very good tactician, rushing in like that is very reckless. The Suna Genin sneered and was about to make her move when a hiss met her ears. She looked down at her stomach and saw the explosive tag seconds before it blew. The Naruto in front of her melted down to mud and she cursed him. The dusty packed floor was painted red as she was blown to bits. That was a war-strength explosive tag. The real Naruto came up from the ground just a few feet from the splattered Genin. Just for the record, it's illegal to buy war-strength explosive tags, not make them, Naruto shouted before going to help his comrades in battle. Each shinobi there over the rank of Genin smirked at the boy. Deidara versus Puppeteer. Deidara had a bored look on her face as she cut the chakra strings holding onto the puppet with her chakra scalpel. You puppeteers are really annoying, at least the last one had the decency to fall quickly. The blonde Iwa Genin said, enjoying the anger of her fellow kunoichi. There were only a few meters separating the two blondes with the puppet sitting at Deidara's feet. Suddenly, the Suna tactician ran up beside the girl. Rai? I thought you were dead. The puppeteer shouted in shock and her shock remained for a few moments until she realized one of the basic ninja techniques. She realized too late as the tanto was already sitting in her skull, right between the eyes. Naruto's henge puffed away as the girl's body fell. The brunette activated his tanto with some Kaden chakra and burned away the blood. Let's go take out the stragglers. As the two ran towards the last two Suna shinobi, Kurotsuchi joined them, still holding a bloody kunai. Genjutsu user sucked, he didn't even recognize Kori Shinshu no Jutsu, she huffed. The three Iwa nin got behind the remaining two Suna Genin and Naruto held out 4 fingers. The Kumo nin facing them noticed the sign and jumped back, as if retreating. Although from what Naruto could tell, Avaroy's left arm was sliced pretty bad. Team 1 went through some hand seals and Kurotsuchi released her jutsu first. The fireball escaped her lips and her two teammates both released a futon jutsu to increase its lethality. Their Kumo comrades were already in the formation needed, one each side of the two Suna nin with Team 1 behind them. The Suna nin were boxed in with a giant Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu heading towards them. The futon user noticed the formation around them before seeing the giant fireball. She barely saved herself by using a futon jutsu to shoot herself in the air. The only bad part being that it pinned the taijutsu user to the ground, making his death something bound to happen. By the time the futon user came down, she was a good couple meters away from the group and her now crisp teammate. She went through the hand seals that Naruto and Deidara knew as futon. Repusho. The wind blades headed towards them until Naruto threw down his barrier kunai, stopping the blades almost instantly at the wall. They heard her curse, she must have been short on chakra after all. Naruto retrieved his kunai and all 6 of faction is stalked towards her. She began walking backwards until she walked straight into a Deidara clone. Kaboom! The clone yelled before exploding into bits with the girl as the explosive tag went off. Beside Naruto, Deidara started laughing hysterically. Kami, I love explosives. She muttered with a crazy look in her eye. While everyone took a step away from the homicidal blonde, Rasa got up again and began speaking. That was an excellent showing, but unfortunately this is not done just yet. Team 9 from Kumo and Team 1 from Iwa must now fight to earn the rank of Chunin. Remember that no one is a forever ally. In the arena, the Genin looked shocked and half of their expressions were genuine. Naruto balled up his fist and began shaking. No, I won't do it, he shouted. The Kumo nin looked at him and nodded. We won't either. They all shouted. That was when they all felt a pain in their chests. Their eyes turned blurry, but they saw Team 1 turn into mud. That in itself told them who had backstabbed them in a literal and figurative sense. Naruto's fiery tanto was poking through Avaroy's chest while the two girls had their chakra-extended kunai embedded in the two males. With a nod, all of Team 1 twisted their blades and forced their blade diagonal. Their blades ripped out of the Genin's left shoulders and the now dead bodies fell to the ground. A silence surrounded the arena at the quick backstab and deception until shinobi around the arena started clapping. In the end, all 3 cage present were standing on the balcony clapping their hands together. Congratulations to Team 1 of Iwa for winning the Chunin exams. Their reward is the rank of Chunin and 2B rank jutsu of their choosing from the Cage library. Rasa shouted. The roars flooded the arena, not a single person was able to hear, but the Genin themselves were already deaf from their blood rushing so much. The next morning the newly Chunin Team 1 stood in front of the Cage's desk, each one holding a face of slight excitement. So do you 3 know what jutsu you want from the library? Rasa asked, earning 3 quick nods. Alright, go ahead and say them. Deidara was the first one to speak. Suiden, Suiryuden no Jutsu and Futon. Atsugai please. Kurotsuchi went next. Kaden. Zukaku and Doden. Doryukatsu please. Naruto went last. Kaden. Goryuka no Jutsu and Doden. Doryu Joheki please. Ross's assistant walked away and returned a few minutes later with 6 scrolls. He handed 2 to each person before going back to the side of his cage. There are your jutsu, and I must say that any of you 3 are welcome in this village at any time. Rasa said, getting a nod from each and a wave as they walked out. Naruto leaned against the balcony on the roof of his house, overlooking the village. The brunette realized something while he was up there. He had no dream or goal to strive for. While he could strive to become Tsuchikage, he didn't know about all that paperwork. Make your goal something that you want to do with all your heart. Kurama suggested from inside the seal. That got Naruto thinking of things he actually wanted to do. He wanted to become a Junin, but what was he supposed to do after becoming a Junin? The hidden Uzumaki pondered different goals until the sun went down. He heard his 2 teammates shouting from the stairway behind him and chuckled. Hey Koku-kun, what do you think we should do tomorrow? I want to train our new jutsu while Kurotsuchi-chan wants to do a B rank. Deidara asked, walking onto the roof with the ravenette just behind her. It would be better to learn those new jutsu along with the ones from Jiraiya's scroll. That way we can fight off anyone that we encounter. Plus, we could teach each other the jutsu that we know, like Kurotsuchi-chan could teach us some of her Doden jutsu. Naruto answered before turning back to lean on the balcony. He could hear Deidara stick her tongue out and Kurotsuchi slap her. A few moments later, the girls joined him on the railing, one on his left and one on his right. What are you even up here for? Kurotsuchi asked, turning to face him with her cheek in her palm. I've been doing some thinking, was his short answer. Well, what are you thinking about then? The ravenette asked. Naruto shook his head in the negative and turned around. Nothing, I've got it solved now. The girls followed him into the home. My goal is to protect you too, Naruto thought. Asterisk a few days later to Sama. Kitsuchi yelled, running into his father's office. The old man was quite startled by his son's unexpected entrance. What is it, Kitsuchi-kun? Onoki asked, floating out of his seat. Check out pages 45, 46, and 47. Kitsuchi said, handing over the latest issue of the bingo book. What? Did they up the copy ninja's bounty again? The old man asked, taking the book and flipping through the pages. His eyes were wandering until they met with the electric purple of Naruto's. The old man looked at the page across and saw his blonde granddaughter. He flipped the page again to meet the pink eyes of Kurotsuchi. Go get them from their training facility while I look over the information. Onoki ordered. Team 1's training facility. Naruto and Deidara sat on top of a piece of raised earth while watching Kurotsuchi perform her kaden. Zukaku. The small fireball exhaled from Kurotsuchi's mouth erupted into a giant firestorm once it met the ground, and the team watched as it raged on. Kurotsuchi landed on the platform just behind them with a slight pant. That damn jutsu takes more chakra than any of my other techniques. The girl panted. Kids? Tusama needs you in his office now. They heard Kitsuchi yell from the entrance. Deidara-chan, leave an Iwa Bunshin to put out the fire, Naruto said before leaving in a puff of smoke. The 2 girls soon followed and they flashed through the village in shunshuns. Once inside the office, they saw Onoki still reading a bingo book. What's the big deal, Gigi? Deidara asked, slightly annoyed about being interrupted. You 3 have been entered into the bingo book and I suspect the rakeage did it, Onoki said, setting the book down and spinning it 180. Naruto looked at the picture of himself and the information underneath. Name. Koku Muranami moniker. N. A rank. Chunin affiliations. Iwagakure. Known associates. Deidara Gushiken, Kurotsuchi Chisaka, Kitsuchi Chisaka, and Sandame Tsuchikage. Sex. Male age. 10 to 11 hair. Long spiky brown hair weight. N. A. Height. 5 feet 1 description. Standard Iwa uniform without sleeves or cloth flap. Notable visual keys. Face concealed with a red bandana. Ninjutsu. Futon, Kaden, and Doden. High Chunin level. Genjutsu. N. A Taijutsu. High Chunin, stamina indeterminable. Other skills. Skilled in the usage of a tanto possibly made from chakra metal as it is seen to ignite. Possibly from fire nature chakra infused in the blade. Sensory type ninja and known seal user. Has shown usage of war-grade explosive tags. Tactician of his squad. If encountered. Kill on-site bounty. 20,000 ryo in Kaminari no Kuni due to murder of comrades from Kumo without mercy. 20,000 alive, 15,000 dead. Well shit, he cursed, having your personal information available to enemies wasn't a good thing. Deidara looked at the page next to it and read her information under her picture but not before making a comment. I look cute in this picture. Name: Deidara Gushiken. Moniker: N.A. Rank. Chunin affiliations: Iwagakure known associates: Kurotsuchi Chisaka, Koku Muranami, Kitsuchi Chisaka, Sandame Tsuchikage. Sex: female age: 10 to 11 hair, long blonde weight, N.A. Height: 5 feet 0 description, standard Iwa uniform without left sleeve and with skirt. Notable visual keys: single bang hanging over left side of face. Ninjutsu: Raiden, Doden, Kaden, and Sweden High Chunin. Genjutsu: N.A. Taijutsu, High Chunin, stamina indeterminable. Other skills: skilled in usage of special kunai which can spark with Raiden chakra and lengthen with said chakra. She is also the medic of her team. If encountered: kill on sight bounty, 20,000 ryo in Kaminari no Kuni due to murder of comrades from Kumo without mercy, 20,000 alive, 15,000 dead. Kurotsuchi reached out and flipped the page, showing her own picture and information. Name: Kurotsuchi Chisaka. Moniker: N.A. Rank, Chunin. Affiliations: Iwagakure known associates: Deidara Gushiken, Koku Muranami, Kitsuchi Chisaka, Sandame Tsuchikage. Sex: female age: 10 to 11 hair, long black weight, N.A. Height: 5 feet 0 description, standard Iwa uniform without right sleeve and with skirt. Notable visual keys: bangs hanging over forehead protector. Ninjutsu: Doden and Kaden High Chunin level Genjutsu. High Chunin known to use in tandem with Iwa Bunshin to kill. Taijutsu: High Chunin, stamina indeterminable. Other skills: skilled in usage of special kunai which can ignite with Kaden chakra and lengthen with said chakra. If encountered: kill on sight bounty, 20,000 ryo in Kaminari no Kuni due to murder of comrades from Kumo without mercy, 20,000 alive, 15,000 dead. Well, at the very least, our strategies haven't been leaked. Naruto said with a sigh. I'm ordering each of you to learn any jutsu that the others know. I am including your medical jutsu and genjutsu. In these jutsu, I am also including the jutsu that Koku-kun brought in those months ago along with the jutsu you got from the cage. I want each of you to be unpredictable to the enemy. I am giving you all 5 months of no missions to do this. After those months are up I will give you a B rank. I do not care if you do not have an affinity for the jutsu, learn to use it anyways. Onoki said, grabbing the bingo book back. If you 3 learn every single one of those jutsu and show that each one is combat ready before these 5 months are up, then I will give you the B rank early. The Chunin's eyes held such a shine that it practically blinded everyone present, including the hidden Anbu. We're going back to training now, old man. Naruto said, leaving with a shunshin. The girls soon followed and Onoki started laughing. It's gonna be so good to see the rage on Koku-kun's face when he tries to do medical ninjutsu. He's going to need a lot of chakra control to even think about doing it with his reserves. The same with the genjutsu. Onoki's sadistic side was going to have fun for the next few months. Back at the training facility, the 3 members of Team 1 were sitting in a circle debating on what to start on first. We should learn the Doden Jutsu since we all hold an affinity for it, then we can move on to Kaden. After we've gotten both of those down, we can move on to Futon, Sweden, and Raiden. After we've gotten all the ninjutsu down, we can move on to the other topics. We also got to add in time so both of you can learn to fight with your new weapon whenever Kai ships them. Naruto said, his mind was racing at how they were gonna do this. If my calculations are right, then we have roughly 26 jutsu between the 3 of us. It takes roughly a week to get a jutsu down and we have 20 weeks. We're gonna be cutting it close, but we might be able to do it if we do the 12-hour training schedule without breaks. Naruto said, scratching his head. Well, let's start hell. Kurotsuchi muttered, standing and stretching. More like hell for Koku-kun and his horrible chakra control. Deidara joked, hopping to her feet. I'll enjoy you 2 suffering over my seals. 5 months later, Team 1 sat at the very top of the Tsuchikage Tower. Each staring down at the village they'd sworn to protect. The now 11-year-olds had worked past 5 months, they hadn't even gotten a dream in the past 5 months because of a revelation they'd found. While their bodies rested at night, they could go into their minds and read things about the jutsu. They mostly spent the nights in the shared mindscape going on and on about how to do things like medical ninjutsu, seals, and genjutsu theory. By the end of the genjutsu section, all 3 were very happy they were immune to genjutsu. The genjutsu suggestions in the rear of the Uchiha book were brutal for even a shinobi. The medical book wasn't that pretty either, it presented the points to hit someone for them to die a painful death. Naruto stood up at the edge of the tower, enjoying the wind going through his hair. It wasn't that windy in Tsuchi no Kuni, so any wind was good in Naruto's book. We get our B rank today. Deidara cheered as she saw the sun begin to peek over the mountains. Yeah, we better get down to the house before breakfast, Kurotsuchi said. And with that, they headed home to get breakfast. Whenever they reached the house, the only person awake was Onoki, and he was still in his striped pajamas. Hey old man, Naruto greeted quietly while walking in the front door with his team. Once their shoes were off, they walked into the kitchen and ignored the old man's loud coffee sipping. So you three are ready for your first B rank? Onoki asked, holding the mug like a housewife. The three Chunin nodded while sitting down at the bar in the kitchen. Well, you three are in luck. Today is the day one of the spies in Konoha is supposed to be delivering some documents. You three will have to meet up with him tonight, Onoki said. The three nodded and began to ask questions. Where do we have to meet him? Naruto asked. When should we leave? Deidara asked. You have to meet him in the capital of Taki no Kuni. I'd say you should leave right after I give you the full report, since it is unknown when he's leaving, but I'm not giving the full report until you're done cooking breakfast, Onoki said, opening the fridge and pulling out the necessary things to make a good breakfast. Get to cooking, kids, Onoki said, floating out the room. Said kids grumbled their way off the stools and into the kitchen. I'll handle the miso soup if you two can get the side dishes, Naruto said, rummaging for a pot. Yeah, we got it, the girls answered. After breakfast, Team 1 stood in front of Onoki, who was at his desk. Team 1 will now be presented with their first B-rank mission and first mission without a Junin sensei, Onoki said, handing a file over. Your mission is to travel to the capital of Taki no Kuni and retrieve the documents from a man named Mizuki. His picture is in the file. Once you have received the documents, kill Mizuki and head straight back to the border of Tsuchi no Kuni. Be prepared to fight pursuing Konoha ninja ranging from Chunin to Junin. If any of them see you, then you must kill them. You three have my permission to use your Biju's chakra if any Anbu show up. If you require more help, then flare your Biju chakra. Chunin Koku will be this mission leader. Dismissed. The three Chunin nodded and vanished in Shunshin's. They all appeared at the southern gate and began their way to Taki no Kuni. Once they were a good few hundred feet away, Naruto spoke. Use a little Biju chakra in your legs, let's get this done quickly. The normal red hue appeared on their legs and they shot off at mid-Junin speeds. It only took them a few hours to reach the capital, and it was about noon whenever they did. Team 1 settled down in a cafe at the south of the town and waited. They were on their third cup of tea whenever Naruto picked up something on his radar. There's a shinobi heading here fast. There's about 6 shinobi after him. 3 of them are Chunin and 3 are Junin. We need to get outside now, Naruto said, rushing out of his seat and into the street. The 3 jumped up to the cafe rooftop and Naruto turned to his 2 comrades. Do not hold anything back. This is gonna get messy. The 3 shot off towards the shinobi being chased by the Konoha nin. They got to the foliage surrounding the capital and their eyes caught onto the running Mizuki. They also caught onto the giant scroll strapped to his back and guessed he stole something other than documents. Our top priority is his death and the retrieval of his kunai pouch and that scroll. Stick together no matter what, Naruto ordered, jumping down into the clearing Mizuki stopped in. Mizuki was drowning in sweat by the time he got to the clearing. Once he saw the 3 Iwa headbands, he let out a sigh of relief. That relief soon vanished when he saw the 6 Konoha shinobi behind him. He jumped beside the Iwa nin and pulled a kunai. He didn't even know he was betrayed as his heart was quickly punctured by a tanto. Before the body hit the ground, Naruto grabbed his kunai pouch and the big scroll. He opened the pouch and rummaged through it only to find no documents. He was about to wrap the scroll around his waist when one of the Konoha Junin spoke up. Hand over the scroll of seals and we can all go home, the man said, his hand ready on his kunai pouch. Sure, why not? Naruto said, holding out the scroll. The man grew a grin on his face before stepping out to grab it. Naruto dropped one side of the scroll and flung out his right hand. He sliced the man's throat with his chakra scalpel before Iwa Bunshin came up behind all the other shinobi. 2 of the Chunin fell dead, leaving a Chunin and 2 Junin. Naruto threw the scroll of seals around his waist and tightened it down. He pulled his tanto while his 2 comrades pulled their own weapons. Deidara had her 2 dark blue sai out while Kurotsuchi had her bright red karambit. The ruthless team won. The remaining male Junin said, getting a weird look from the Chunin. They're all in the bingo book. Each one has a 20,000 ryo bounty in Kaminari no Kuni, so we get extra pay when we kill them, the female Junin said. Kurotsuchi let out a sickly laugh which kind of scared the Konoha Chunin. We've been training for the past 5 months. I doubt any of us are that weak anymore. The Ravenet said, throwing out a seal less Megan. Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu. The two Junin broke the genjutsu on themselves before breaking out the Chunin. We both know that you're a genjutsu user, do not try those tricks. The female said, glaring at Kurotsuchi. You forgot that genjutsu could be layered by others however. Naruto said, his voice coming from behind them. Just then, each of them felt a burning sensation on their arms. They flared their chakra again to break out the genjutsu and noticed their new tattoos. Shit! The female Junin cursed, recognizing the war-grade explosive seal imprinted on their skin. They noticed that the person behind them wasn't Naruto but instead Deidara. Said Blonde looked at her team. Kaboom? She asked. Both of her teammates nodded. Yes, Deidara, kaboom. The clone along with the Konoha shinobi were blown to bits. Whenever Naruto observed the damage, he saw that the crater was a few meters wide on each side and a few meters deep. In the bottom of the crater was some nice, cherry, paste. Both of you start heading back to the border, use your Biju chakra. I'll clean this up. Naruto shouted, walking up to Mizuki's body. The girls nodded at him and hopped away. The Uzumaki threw Mizuki's body into the crater and wiped his hands on his pants. Once Naruto sensed that both girls were a good distance away, he began gathering chakra. The brunette jumped hundreds of feet in the air and released a small fireball which impacted in the middle of the crater. Kaden. Zukaku, Naruto thought with a satisfied grin. He vanished from the air with a shunshin before the inferno reached him. In a matter of seconds, he was in the trees just beside his two comrades. He added Kurama's chakra to his legs for extra speed as well. Well, I guess this is mission complete. Naruto said. Those Junin must have been new or something because they really didn't act like a shinobi should. They didn't even release any techniques or anything. Deidara said, slightly disappointed. Well, it is kind of difficult to escape a triple-layered genjutsu and an explosive seal being etched into your bare skin. Kurotsuchi commented. Oh yes, the genjutsu was triple-layered but the third layer held so little change that it was basically reality. Naruto jumped up from his bed, his brow covered in a cold sweat. Curse these damned dreams. The boy said, laying back down. He peeked to the side to see it was 2 a.m. and sighed. Those dreams are becoming more vivid by the day, Kurama. He said, rethinking over his most previous one. Inside the seal, Kurama sat with a worried expression on his face. It's happening way too soon. He shouldn't even see Asura's memories at all but he's living through them. Is it the necklace? Or perhaps since Sama told him of Asura? Kurama wondered. If it isn't the necklace then it means the Indra reincarnation should also be receiving these memories. If Indra's reincarnation isn't in Iwagakure right now then he should be pulled here by his connection with Naruto. The fox hid its worry and answered his container. I'm not going to lie to you about what these dreams are. You could probably already tell that you're in the place of Asura in these dreams. Kurama said, getting a nod from Naruto. Yeah, I'm in place of Asura Otsutsuki, Aoi Gigi's kid. A smirk hopped onto Kurama's lips for just a second before answering. The reason for this is that you're his reincarnation. Both Asura and Indra are reincarnated on a fairly common basis. The last example of this being Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. As for your connection with Asura, it usually means you will have to find the Indra reincarnation and figure out if you two can be comrades or fight to the death. Naruto was about to speak only to be cut off. However, you are getting the memories of Asura so the path may be changing. If the necklace around your neck is speeding up the connection process between you and your reincarnated brother then I do not know if Indra's reincarnation is going through it too. Mizu no Kuni hey, wake up. It's time to get the party started. A tall slender man with a giant sword said, shaking a teenage boy laying on the ground. I'm up. The teen responded standing and stretching. Good. We still gotta get across the entire Mizu no Kuni after all, partner. The man teased the last part. I swear your jokes and personality kill your entire cold-blooded killer-themed Juzo. The teen said, shoving a red Tomo necklace under his shirt. Well, we can't all be cool all the time like the great Itachi Uchiha. Juzo chuckled. The teen simply flipped him off and began walking away while putting on his Akatsuki cloak. Asura. Who are you, in this time? The teen thought. Back in Iwa *, as much as Naruto tried to go back to sleep, he simply couldn't. So, this morning he would start early. The brunette took a shower, got dressed, made sure to give his hair habitants some food, and started his way to the training facility. He decided to walk and get in the nice fresh air of the morning. Plus, it was only a few minutes walk away. The Uzumaki got into the facility and headed up to the control room, but couldn't have anyone seeing what he was about to do after all. Once the cameras were disabled, He went back down to the ground and went through some hand seals before slamming his hands down. Doden. Doryu Joheki, Naruto whispered, forming a nice thick slab of earth. The male Chunin held out his right palm and focused. A few seconds later, the bright blue rotating orb formed and he slammed it into the earth slab. The poor thing didn't even stand a chance as it was reduced to rubble. Out of the rubble came an Iwa Bunshin to recreate the wall over and over while Naruto used his Rasengan over and over. Few hours later, Naruto walked into the kitchen, his hair still wet as he took another shower at the facility. "Ohio," he greeted, taking off his shoes at the door before sitting down at the table. "Spent the morning training again, I see," Hatsume said. "Yeah, I'm trying to learn a new technique," the brunette answered, snapping his chopsticks apart. With a quick itadakimasu, he started eating. "I know you're a shinobi now and shinobi have secrets, but as a mother, I'd like to know what my child has been doing since 2 a.m. this morning," Hatsume said, lightly glaring at him. "Fine, I was working on Doden. Doryu Joheki," Naruto said before returning to his soup. It wasn't a lie per se, but it wasn't the whole truth. "That wasn't that hard, was it?" Hatsume asked, lightly patting him on the head from across the table. "Oi, you're gonna get dandruff in my soup," Deidara commented, scooting away slightly. "You better not be talking about his dandruff. Have you seen your sheets whenever I clean them at the end of the week? It's like a snowstorm," Hatsume scolded. Kurotsuchi just sat silently off to the side, eating her rice with a smirk. "Enough messing with the kids. Let's just eat breakfast and start our day," Onoki commented, earning a nod from each family member. After breakfast, Team 1 stood in their training facility just behind Onoki as he had a clone open the scroll of seals. Surprisingly, there was no trap or anything. "I guess the tree huggers thought someone would never be able to steal the thing," Onoki said, walking over and rolling out the scroll to its full length. If one word described the Iwa shinobi's emotions at that moment, disappointment would be the best one. There were only 4 jutsu for Kami's sake. Naruto went ahead and grabbed the scroll, listing off all the jutsu. Kuchiyose, Edo Tensai, Hake no Fuin Shiki, Bunshin Deibakuha, and Tajukage Bunshin no Jutsu. "They seem interesting," Naruto said, before reading the paragraph under Tajukage Bunshin. "A clone that gives its memories back to the user when dispelled. The Taju version was banned by the Shodem for taking too much chakra from the user. The Nidaime Hokage used them for scouting and on occasion training." "Huh. Hey old man, do you mind if we learn this?" Onoki looked at him and nodded. "It's a very useful technique. I've seen it used in battle by the old monkey of a Sandaime Hokage. Learn it by noon and leave a couple here to learn the other jutsu while I give you a relaxing C rank," Onoki said, floating away from the kids. "Do not practice the Edo Tensai. Even I know that jutsu is inhumane and should be banned," the old man said, heading towards the control room. Whenever he arrived and checked the security footage, he noticed there was a blank spot from that morning. The blank spot caused a pair of narrowed eyes but nothing more. He would find out what the boy was actually practicing sometime later. Noon, training facility. Onoki floated into the facility, only to see the entire thing filled to the brim with clones of all 3 students. He silently thanked himself for knowing how to fly as he floated above all the clones. "What the hell are you 3 doing?" Onoki shouted, hoping to be heard over the chatter of the clones. "We just wanted to know how many we could make," all the Deidara clones responded. "Your Jinchuriki, you could probably make hundreds. Koku-kun could probably make thousands on his own," Onoki said with a sigh. The room was covered in a temporary smokescreen until the ventilation system kicked in, as all the clones dispelled. The 3 Jinchuriki fell to the ground, each one with a very strong headache and a nosebleed. Onoki was very concerned about the nosebleed part as he quickly floated down. Luckily the 3 were already grouped together, so all he had to do was roll them on their backs to check them over. A few moments later, they woke up to a concerned grandfather. "You okay? The hell did you 3 do?" Onoki asked, looking at all 3. "Information overload," Kurotsuchi answered with a groan. "Do you 3 need to go to the hospital?" Onoki asked, looking at Deidara. The blonde shook her head. "No, we just need Advil to deal with our headaches. As a side note, did you know that Biju gets headaches?" Onoki ignored the last part and went to go get the medicine. When he returned, all 3 were on their feet again and massaging their temples. After passing out the medicine, the Jinchuriki created a synced hand seal. Once their fingers crossed, 2 Kage Bunshin of each appeared behind them. "Let's go get you the C rank then," Onoki said, vanishing to his office with a shunshin. The Jinchuriki followed and soon they were all in the office. "I've already gotten a C rank picked out for you 3. A genin team was sent to take out a bandit camp, but there's a bit too many bandits for them to handle, so I need you three to help them out. Is it the newly graduated class genin? Deidara asked, hoping that it wasn't. It is, this is their first mission out of the village. Onoki answered, enjoying the face faults. Griot, we get to deal with greenhorns that probably won't listen. Kurotsuchi said, her face set in a pout. Ah, you'll be fine. You three might be glad to see who their sensei is. Onoki said, confusing the Chunin. Anyways, you are set to leave immediately and link up with them 4 miles south of the village. When you arrive, the Junin sensei is to be squad leader with Deidara-chan as second in command. Why am I second in command? Koku-kun is the squad leader here. The blonde responded. You are all Chunin, each of you are leaders and I need to make sure you can lead. Now, Team 1 is dismissed. Onoki said, grabbing a piece of paperwork off to the side. Oh old man, those Konoha shinobi that we killed recognized us and even called us a moniker. They called us the Ruthless Team 1. Naruto said in a matter-of-fact tone before walking out the room. A little later, it hardly took the team 8 minutes to reach the Genin squad. Whenever they landed in the clearing, they all took notice of who the Junin was. Izan-sensei, Chan. They all shouted, getting a smile from the woman. Izan gave out hugs to her former students before turning to her current students. Figure I might as well introduce you 6. The boy with the long brown hair is Muranami Koku, the blonde girl is Gushiken Deidara, and the final girl is Chisaka Kurotsuchi. They were my students back in the academy like you three, Izan said with a smile. We know who they are, sensei. The only female on the team said. Yeah, we know who the Tsuchikage's grandkids are. The shorter male said. Well, I'm glad, but they don't know who you are. Introduce yourselves. The 3 genin groaned but did it anyway. The female started, I'm Loa's Losuchi. Losuchi had light blonde hair and green eyes. Her outfit was a form-fitting t-shirt and a pair of baggy pants leading down to shinobi sandals. Her headband was around her neck. The short male began afterwards, I'm Loa's Shimizu. Shimizu had light blonde hair and green eyes as well. His outfit was a green suit vest over some fishnet armor and some red baggy pants to shinobi sandals. His headband was just loosely wrapped around his left thigh. The taller male spoke last, I'm Tsukai Norio. Norio had short black hair and brown eyes. Norio's outfit was just as simple as the other two, with a black tank top over some fishnet armor and a pair of black baggy pants leading to shinobi sandals. I remember you three. Kurotsuchi said. Norio was the dead last while you 2 siblings were the top. So Gigi decided to follow Konoha's example in that horrible teaming decision. The black-haired boy seemed a little down, but what Naruto said brought him back up. It's not like those titles mean anything in the shinobi world. You'll all die the same in battle. Now, where is this bandit camp? And do we have a plan set up? Naruto asked, clapping his hands together. It's just a jog to our east. It's not that big of a camp, but I didn't want to risk having my genin killed. Izan answered his first question. Naruto held out his finger and closed his eyes. No wonder I hardly sensed any of them. Their chakra levels aren't even close to that of an academy student. There's about 70 of them. The genin looked at him weirdly. Koku-kun is a sensory ninja, Deidara said, quickly getting a few nods. I was going to let you three come up with a plan. You need to know how to do it after all. Izan said, earning dry laughs from the Chunin. Trust me, we know how to make a plan. Deidara-chan, you're in charge of this mission, so what do you want to do? Not too many explosions. I want to teach them interrogation. Naruto said, earning a pout from the blonde. Fine, we'll leave 3 alive for the kiddies to torture. Deidara pouted, ignoring Norio's comment about how they were older. Strategy 1. Mix in some booms here and there. The blonde female said. Triple? Kurotsuchi asked, earning a nod. Naruto groaned at the 2 and turned to the genin. Strategy 1 is where we put a genjutsu over the opponent and then kill them. We used it on our first C rank and it even worked back in the Chunin exams. Whenever Kurotsuchi-chan asked triple, she was referring to a triple-layered genjutsu. Naruto explained. The genin nodded along. Alright kiddies. Whenever we put out the genjutsu, all of the bandits will be frozen in place, so take your pick on who you want to interrogate. Leave the rest and we'll leave it up to the good old explosive tags. Deidara said, beginning the light jog to the camp. Once they arrived, all 3 Chunin made a quick ram seal. The buzzing activity in the camp died down instantly and the Chunin simply walked up to the front entrance. The 2 guards there were blankly staring at the sky, which kind of creeped the genin out. Any of you want to torture one of these guys? Naruto asked, his hand already gripping his tanto. Once all 3 heads shook, he threw out the blade with immense force. It caught the right guard in the jugular before Naruto yanked it out and towards the left, arcing it out. The arced blade sliced through the second guard's throat and Naruto pulled his blade back and cleaned it with a nice pulse of Kaden chakra. He noticed that the genin were staring at him along with Izan. "What? At least this way I don't get blood on me," the brunette said, putting his blade back in its sheath. Surprisingly, Shimizu ran up beside the younger male with stars in his eyes. "How did you do that?" he asked, his voice slightly fanboying. "There's a reel of ninja wire hidden just under the handle wrapping. When I reach back and grip my tanto, I attach the end of the wire to my palm. It's basically the same premise of the leaf exercise, just put into a battle scenario. I also have a little bit wrapped around all my kunai and shuriken so I can receive them quicker. Whenever we return to Suna I plan on asking if I could get the basic premise of their chakra threads so I can make it more effective," Naruto explained. He enjoyed the amazed expression on the boy's face and grew a smirk. "How about after we finish this mission I show you how to do it with a kunai?" Naruto questioned. The boy gave out a quick nod and ran off to find someone to torture. "Hey girls, go set the explosives while I speak with Koku-kun," Izan said, walking up behind Naruto and putting a hand on his shoulder. The two female chunin nodded and ran into the camp. "What is it, Izan-chan?" Naruto asked, looking up. The older woman chuckled at him. "It's been 5 years and you still call me that even though I was your sensei," she said. "Well yeah, I knew you as Izan-chan before I knew you as Izan-sensei." The Junin simply shrugged at his reasoning. "Anyways, I wanted to ask if you're willing to teach my team for a while?" Izan asked, earning a weird glance from Naruto. "Yeah sure, why?" Naruto asked. Izan placed a hand on her belly and sighed. "In a few months I'm not gonna be able to be a Junin sensei anymore," she said, a glazed look in her eyes. A grin grew on Naruto's face. He elbowed her in the thigh since she was too tall for him to reach her side. "Ooh, so who's the father?" he asked, playing with his eyebrows. Izan giggled at him and swatted at his elbow. "You already know who it is. You were there whenever he asked me out," Izan said. "You can blame Kurotsuchi-chan for that. She was the one that broke my leg with her Doden Jutsu." Naruto huffed, crossing his arms. "And you were the one trying to find me for a lollipop." She glared at him lightly. It was about that time that the girls returned with the genin dragging bandits behind them. Deidara also had a bandit over her shoulder. "We need to give the kids an example of how to do it," she said, earning a nod from Naruto. A sudden idea hit Naruto as he looked at Deidara's grin. "You used the war grade tags, didn't you?" Naruto asked, getting a cheeky nod. "How many?" Naruto asked. From the fact that neither girl raised their hands, he guessed they didn't count. "We need to get as far away from this place as possible," Naruto shouted, assuming command over all. Damn the old man, he wasn't gonna get blown to bits because his teammates were explosion happy. The Chunin ended up grabbing the Genin's thugs as they rushed away. Once they were a good mile away, the explosion finally went off. Even from a distance they were blinded by the flash. Naruto set down his bandit and pushed chakra to his legs for a high jump. He observed the crater left and winced when he landed. The crater is at least 30 meters across. "I have no idea how deep it is," the brunette said, earning 4 big-eyed shinobi while the other 2 looked accomplished. "I guess this is as good a place as any to interrogate," Deidara said. They were on a dirt road surrounded by rocks on each side, but she obviously didn't care if a traveler saw them torturing them. "Set your victims against the wall," Deidara ordered. Once all bandits were against the wall, she made a slab of earth from the rock wrap around the men. "Koku-kun, it's your time to shine," the blonde said, stepping back. "There are many different ways to interrogate someone. Pain, blackmail, force them into a state of mind which doesn't allow them to think properly. Whichever you choose to do, always remember to ask your question whenever they look like they're about to break. I'm going to force this guy into a certain state of mind. I'm going to tell you now that this will not be pretty." Naruto activated a chakra scalpel on his right hand and got to work. He began by cutting both Achilles and moved his hand up to the man's stomach. By that time, the guy was awake and just saw some kid cut open his heel with his bare hand. "Tell me who hired you or I disembowel you," Naruto said, his voice deep and crude with a little of Kurama's chakra. Naruto's hand was tilted into the man's stomach and he slowly moved it in. "No one hired us," the man shouted, fear was seeping into his voice. "We just decided to set up camp here because of the trade route," the man shouted again. Naruto froze for a moment before turning off his chakra scalpel. "Thanks for your cooperation," the boy said in his normal voice before swinging his hand into the man's throat. The chakra scalpel formed at the last second and the man didn't even know what happened. Naruto stood and stretched a little. That's how you interrogate someone. If you don't have any questions, then go for it. An hour later in Tsuchikage's office, once the genin were sent out of the office, Onoki glared at the three chunin. I'm banning the three of you from using those war tags within Tsuchi no Kuni borders. Now what is it that you wanted to say about Izan? The female Junin cleared her throat before answering. I'd like to request that Team 1 come help me train my team whenever they can. Koku-kun already promised Shimizu that he'd show him how to do his kunai ninja wire trick. Onoki had a grin on his face. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.